Hello, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is part two of a series I'm doing where I'm reading the Alice Asylum Design Bible. Last time we left off at the Cheshire Cat's lair, at least from what I remember, this is where we left off. I have skimmed the rest of it, and it looks like we have quite a ways to go. So this will either be part two of a 3-part series, or this will be part two of possibly a 4-part series, depending on how long I want to take this and how slowly I'd like to go. I think I'd actually like to go a little slower through the story elements. If you're just joining us and don't know about this game, this is a game that was pitched to EA and was not canceled, but denied or rejected, I would say, because that implies that they never really got started on the game development and programming process. So this design Bible is the closest we're going to get to taking a look at what another American McGee's Alice game would look like. I'm a big fan of Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland was published in 1865, I believe, on the day of my birthday. Maybe that's why I have a close kinship to it. Honestly, I didn't know that for a long time. It has more to do with just sort of the imaginative world that Lewis Carroll created, a lot of the, I guess, psychological underpinnings, which the Alice series has relied on to produce a kind of psychotic interpretation of the Alice series in a way that's darker, we might say more adult, in the sense that it's tackling a lot of issues of repression, of psychotic denial, of borderline personality organization, some neurotic tendencies, and I have really enjoyed this so far. I've really enjoyed mostly the art. The art design of this has just been stunning. Like, it would have been absolutely wonderful to see this in a video game format with modern tech, to have Alice the Madness Returns on the PlayStation and Xbox 360 consoles, to see what a modern version of that would look like with colors and with modern lighting techniques. I think it would just be a stunning iterative push on the game. I don't think it necessarily would have been anything revolutionary. And the same holds true for the story. I think the story is very closely reminiscent of the Alice Madness Returns series, with the interesting twist of Alice going through the 5 stages of grief, something that is externalized or made explicit here in the worlds that she goes to. For example, right now we are in the bargaining realm, and we just came out of the anger realm, dealing with the Queen of Hearts, anger and judgment, I would say. So that's a very binary, splitting world between those who are innocent, quote unquote, and those who are guilty. Before that, we were in the denial realm, which was a giant carnival of a place where happiness was prevalent no matter what, producing this kind of sick and eerie world where clearly denial is a way to cover up with a thin veil the true sadness that lurks underneath. Alice is feeling guilty and in the process of grieving because she lost her family in a fire. In reality, in the real world of this story, and that is sort of similar to what happens in Alice the Madness Returns, only here it's a little bit more discreet, a little bit more intricate in the way that it's telling the story. So enough with the preamble. If you're here for part 2, odds are you've seen part 1. Let's hope. Here we're at the Cheshire Cat's lair. We're trying to find the Mad Hatter, and I'll go ahead and get started. Once again, like last time, I will try and move my camera so I can show you the art that my web camera is covering up. So hopefully I will remember to do that as I go from place to place. So here, for example, I can move the camera over here to the other side so you can see the full picture here and you can see the text that I'm going to be reading. The scene morphs and warps to the foreboding, warped scenery of the Cheshire Cat's lair, a complex and environmentally distinct level design, focused on spatial navigation, puzzles, astrological symbols, and manifests of star signs dance in the skies above Alice. We play until Alice is met with a seemingly impossible and impassable obstacle blocking her way. Alice cannot move forward. Solving a puzzle on the face of the obstacle, the pieces fit together from a disconnected mess, forming the shape of a star with 4 points. That sounds familiar. I feel like Have I done this already? Maybe I read that whenever I stopped recording. Once again, we're going to move this here. There's a new enemy here. Once again, like I said, I'm going to probably be skipping the gameplay sections and focusing more on the story, especially dialogue. Here's an astrology puzzle. We play as the obstacle lowers, leading Alice to a swirling gyroscope compass surrounded by stars. As Alice reaches out her hand to hold the compass, previously unseen hints are drawn on the environment around Alice. While she looks around, clasping it, whispers are heard, arrows fade into view, and crudely sketched etchings, arcane astrological symbols, and ghostly riddled way-finding markers appear in the environment. This ability is key to finding secrets and hidden pathways. By using it, a new hidden path is revealed. The impassable now becomes passable. From hundreds of doors, the right one is revealed. The area serves as a tutorial for this new ability. Alice continues to follow the whispers of her inner compass, this way, that way, successfully navigating the remainder of the area. The compass is golden and points true. Holding it within her hands and realizing that following others is not always the correct way to solve her problems, Alice now instead chooses to focus within and follow her own path. She must trust herself. The Cheshire Cat remarks, "Well, it looks like you're starting to listen to the voice that really matters. Learning a thing or two, are we, Alice?" Alice, seemingly always, but something tells me there's still more to learn. Cheshire Cat, it does pay to keep an open mind, but not so open your brain falls out. Speaking of brains, the Hatter awaits you. Just as a side note, the Mad Hatter, the reason why they're mad is because I think most people are aware of this, but the mercury that a Hatter would use, I think, would seep in through the hats or the wigs into their head. I could be wrong about that, but that seems to be like the urban myth that surrounds Hatters and why they're known to be mad. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. We play as Alice continues to follow her new compass and guidance. Staring at the compass's face, the device clicks and whirs, forming a massive top hat covered in arcane symbols, the mark of the Hatter. The broken level design slots into place around Alice, and her way is now much simpler and easier to walk. Alice successfully navigates from out of the Cheshire layer, landing back into the final parts of the Chaosma. Alice continues onward, following the point of the compass. As the shadow of Hatter's laboratory looms over Alice, the concentration of mechanical defenses becomes increasingly dense. We play as Alice fights under the shadows of steam-powered towers and gigantic bronze teapots in the outskirts of Hatter's domain. Here, Alice will face an onslaught of bizarre machines and steam-powered teapot cannons. Gears, rotors, tea, and scrap metal fly as Alice rages into the fight as they repeatedly attempt to carry her away. Finally, as Alice approaches the massive doorway to the laboratory, a trap is engaged. A cutscene plays as a giant clockwork hand engulfs Alice, trapping and immobilizing her. Trapdoors open, and an army of scuttling teapots hoist Alice up. Skittering away on top of a sea of walking teapots, the horde of machines rush Alice and her rabbit through the halls of the Hatter's laboratory. A blur of motion and clattering metal, Cheshire Cat is left behind. He offers no aid as his silhouette simply watches from a safe distance. With a flick of his tail, he disappears. I feel like I have read this already. If I have, I'm sorry. A series of rapid twists and turns atop the machines within the bronze halls, and Alice is dropped unceremoniously to the ground, now unrestrained. Alice stands to her feet as the machines obediently tinker aside. Alice looks up. She finds herself face to face with the Hatter. Hatter's workshop. I'll let you look at the art for a little while. Okay, we're in like a full-blown cutscene here. Interesting play on perspective here with the concept art. Like the size of the Hatter seems much, much larger than Alice. Okay. We're still in the bargaining realm. An establishing cutscene plays as Alice is surrounded by machines. She jumps back and readies her blade. The Hatter is impatient. He stares back at Alice behind a complex magnifying glass apparatus. with Alice on knife edge. Hatter simply nods and resumes his tinkering on a workbench behind him. His back is turned. A curious exchange takes place. Reminds me of Spirited Away, whenever the main character enters the furnace with the man with multiple hands. The Hatter, oh, please put it away, Alice. Here again. Can't you see I'm busy? Alice lowers her blade, confused. Alice, here I was expecting a fight. The Hatter, if that were the case, those words might as well be your eulogy. Our interests are more aligned than you'd think, Alice. I already know what you're here for. I apologize. These machines, though automated, lack a certain finesse. The teapot cannons on the edge of the room sheepishly recoil at Hatter's words. Their forlorn, single eyes stare at the floor. The Hatter, these ones defend me, but not against you. They've been trying to bring you here. You've already destroyed your fair share of my workforce, but I know you still seek answers, and you will fight so blindly and so desperately to find them. So ask. Alice, why should I trust you? The Hatter, those who say they should be trusted must never be. Trust can only be earned, Alice. Afford me that chance and see for yourself. If you really want to drive that blade into my back, you only need to do so. I do not fear death, not in this place. Alice ponders this for a moment and sheathes her blade. Another moment passes as she eyes the Hatter curiously. Alice, very well then. A chance it is. Manipulators, the machines that kept me imprisoned. Tell me about them. The Hatter, yes, manipulators, automatons, perfect replicas. They are everywhere. How do you know you're not one? You won't. My perfect invention, but the Queen controls them. Alice, that's impossible, Hatter. The Queen is dead. She was a machination herself. The Hatter, really? Is that so? Well, if you're certain, you have nothing left to fear from her. Fear pushes us forward, Alice, past the point of disaster and onto collision with calamity. We have no choice when we face it, only that we must be up to the task when it hits. Sure as night follows day, disaster follows you. It hunts you. It looms on the horizon of your mind and threatens us all. Hatter stops his tinkering and steadies his posture. He looks Alice in the eyes. The Hatter. The reasons are simple, Alice. Listen carefully. The artificers in that circus were designed to keep you busy, occupied, imprisoned, distracted. They returned you to where you needed to be, time and time again. Every time you escaped, you were placed back here, and you have tried many times, and you have been returned to the circus with every attempt. The circus is interesting. I'm reading John le Carre's spy novels. Well, I'm listening to the radio dramas, so an abridged version, I would say. And the circus is kind of the inner sanctum of the spy group of that series. They call it the circus. So, a bit of a conflation there in my mind. Alice, I don't remember any of it. The Hatter, the cost of forgetting is high. You might have heard that before, but this time, this really is all for your own good, my dear. Otherwise, your curiosity would undo us all, until perhaps you were ready for what you needed to face. But you never have been. You failed every time. Alice, what must I be ready for? What have I failed? The Hatter, well, that all depends where and when and which attempt. Too many to list. You're both equal parts hope and threat here. Which one you'll turn out to be still remains uncertain. Hatter's gaze narrows, piecing Alice together as if she were a dangerous puzzle. Alice continues, There's someone following me, hunting me, pulling unseen strings. Everywhere she goes, there is death, destruction. Everywhere I go, the shadow follows. I haven't found a way to even challenge her. I don't know if I can, or if I even should. I want to escape this place, Hatter. I want to escape and go home. The Hatter, escape? Go home? Hatter scoffs. The only means to do so was lost long ago. Alice leans down and picks up her rabbit companion. Alice, you mean this? The device inside him. It fought off her corruption. It saved him. The device. It's yours. What is it? Hatter examines the rabbit like a lab specimen as the tiny mute wiggles around soundlessly in his grip. Hatter smiles. Oh, wow. Okay. I need to move this. Well, I'll give you some time to look, and then I'll move it. I'll finish the scene. The Hatter. Indeed, Alice, there is always a way forward. If you have the heart and some other required pieces to see and control the path, we still have a chance to get you home. Hatter pulls a lever and his workshop's walls shift back to reveal an elaborate mechanical stage performance. Puppets representing Alice, the Shadow, the Queen, and the circus loop on stifled rigs and chains, riding in teacups, Hatter explains the story, his arms wildly thrashing about as automated story scenes roll past. He, Alice, and the rabbit ride along together. Hatter speaks. The Hatter. At the behest of the Queen, I was ordered to create the machines that kept you in the circus. A cruel game and one I didn't want to play, but the ruler had leverage on me. You aren't the only victim of being held against your will here, Alice. My very mind was at stake, and she held it cruelly in her hands. A scene of the Queen threatening the Hatter with destroying his mind plays out. Important plot points. I don't know what this is really. Like, what would important plot points 1? Is this something that the player would collect using Alice somewhere in the world? Would this continue in this kind of stage play? This like play within a game? I'm not sure. I'll read it. The Hatter. The circus was made by the Queen. She is order, rules, restraint, law. My genius was forced to build the actors that riddled your stages with lies. But these were lies that were meant to protect you for as long as they could. We kept you as far away from any chaos as possible. Everything was scripted, planned, and to keep your damned curiosity sated. That's really interesting, that like there is regulation, but even the exception to the rules, the lies, were also inculcated or inscripted into the edifice. And so it was the Hatter's job to think of what hadn't been thought of and to include that into the system. I think people with their own psyches, going through grief or mourning or going through, I guess, a particularly conflicting moment in their lives probably do this as well, where there is a kind of paranoid grasping of disparate things and then working it into the system. And perhaps that is part of the bargaining phase. As you are now, as we predicted, we cannot defeat your other half. She is consuming this place in chaos and darkness. She is powerful. Okay, so the split version of Alice is producing maladaptive techniques and is sort of eroding the system from within. This can happen if people catastrophize or if people do not have a good way to stabilize their psyche. It can sort of slowly spin out of control, and it seems like that's happening with Alice, because this Mr. Scratch version of Alice, to use Alan Wake 2, is creating that same problem within Alice's psyche. And so these are just kind of fictionalizations of what's happening in her psyche that she'll have to address. She is powerful, but I too experimented with chaos, using prima materia, the base of all creation. Unstable as they were, my experiments with darkness yielded powerfully chaotic results. In the face of your constant failures, I was poised to build a new catalyst against chaos, built from the very fragments chaos fears. What it built was capable of doing what must be done. It can get you home. But studying chaos is a way of being chaotic. My failed experiments resulted in an unexpected disaster. Artificial chaos is simply no match for the real thing. And it's now here, and we are unprepared. Discombobulated, unstable, uncontrolled. True chaos saw my home and work destroyed, the prima materia lost, and the essential complete fragments of the puzzle scattered around this land in unknown trajectories. We recovered only one piece, had our motions to the heart tapping the chest of Alice's tiny rabbit with his teapot cane. And I'll move this up here perhaps where I've just read so you can kind of see all the artwork in its full glory. The Hatter, and we used it in a powerful sentinel to watch over you. This is all for you, Alice. This part of you must be protected. Seems like the least bothersome place. Important plot points 2. The moon carried the heart. It can withstand chaos. The eyes can focus, dilute, and channel chaos. The brain can control chaos. The eyes and the brain will still remain lost, but if we find them, we might still have a chance to stand against the chaos of the shadows and get you home. Find the lost fragments, Alice. Bring me more prima materia, and I will continue my work. It's a very schizophrenic reading, like how the her psyche has been fragmented into these parts of the body, right? The heart, the brain, the eyes. Deleuze and Guattari, that schizophrenic looking at the world in parts rather than the consummate whole. According to, as far as I know about the philosophical underpinnings of Deleuze and Guattari, they recommend a schizophrenic reading of the world. I don't think psychoanalysis would agree. I think we're always looking to create a stable, cohesive whole with a person. So it'd be interesting to kind of look at this product from a variety of philosophical perspectives to see where Alice goes right or wrong, regardless of what the game wants you to do, and whether they would consider what Alice does a failure or a success, either psychologically or philosophically. But, in video games, we do have this thing of looking for totems. And there's quite a lot of the psychotic or schizophrenic break in games. And the goal of a lot of games is to complete wholeness or to get wholeness, whether it's leveling up your character or acquiring all the objects in a world. When movies do this, it's known as very video gamey. You go off on quests to recover totems. And I think that makes sense. That's founded well, just because a lot of video games rely on MacGuffins like this. But MacGuffins also have a psychological or philosophical basis, which I think is fun to talk about. I'll move on because I'm just churning here. Hatter finishes his grand performance and turns to Alice. They both look at a dark, twisted grandfather clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It is slightly corrupted by chaos, and acts as a gauge of how much time left Alice has. Oof, that's a poorly written sentence. How much time Alice has left to collect the required fragments. The Hatter's certainly no time to waste, my dear. Chaos moves fast, but there is always time for tea. So take it with you. Hatter gives Alice a wild invention, the teacup launcher that fires mortar slug rounds of boiling hot tea. A spluttering, mechanical, steam-powered beast of a weapon. It can also grind enemies to a pulp with the broken pieces of chipped porcelain at close range. Okay, so it's part shotgun, part grenade launcher. So it seems like it's a weapon that would be good for starting engagements and finishing engagements. You shoot a grenade and then you move in with another ranged weapon like the pepper grinder perhaps, where you do some combos with the knife. Because there would probably be some kind of recharge time or a downtime for this weapon, and so you would weapon switch as a way to cancel that out or negate it. Let me move my head. Oh, and not to put a rush on things, but by these calculations, this is the Hatter. If you're unable to collect the heart and the brain within 4 moons, then Wonderland will be consumed by the chaos, and all will be lost. But don't think about that. I'm sure you'll do fine. Hatter shoves Alice out of the door and slams it closed. A second after it shuts, the door quickly reopens, and Alice's rabbit is hurled through the doorway after her, spinning soundlessly. His tiny body thuds gently on the floor. Alice and her rabbit dust themselves off, and she turns to her tiny companion. Alice, I've had more graceful exits, I suppose. It's getting rather dark around here. I believe we need something to help us see clearer. The rabbit nods. The inner compass points the way to Alice's next stop. A click and a whir, the compass face morphs and resembles an eye. We play as Alice returns to the Hall of Doors after a short while of hops, steps, and jumps. We find where the appropriate door is open and waiting at Alice's feet. It's a tiny door only a mouse could fit through, but approaching it causes Alice to shrink rapidly to the necessary size. She steps through the door and travels to her next destination. Interesting. Is that context sensitive? So in Alice, the Madness Returns, there was a button, I believe it was the left trigger, that you could press to shrink yourself. And so there would be moments when you were exploring in the world where there would be a key lock hole, but it would be too small, of course, so you would shrink yourself so that you could navigate through these tunnels to get to the other side. But it was a dedicated button. So it seems like here it just happens to be if you're close enough. Maybe because they want to use that control. Maybe it's too precious on the controller because controllers have so few buttons as it is to mimic reality. So maybe they wanted to use that for something else. As the door begins to close behind her, a black stream of wafting shadow follows Alice and her rabbit into the tiny doorway. Chapter end. Something I noticed about the pacing of this game is that we're going to get a lot of chapters really quickly towards the end, which I think is normal. I think in a lot of games, a couple things. Maybe they pace the game in such a way that they want those chapters to feel faster and faster to create a sense of momentum. Or they had a lot of plans for the end of a game and they were unable to put everything that they wanted into it. And so, of course, the first things that happen on the cutting room floor are the second half of a game rather than the first. And I think anybody who's played games for a long time, especially played games to completion, you can sort of feel that that asymmetry is what I'll call it. So this happens with even the best games. So Dark Souls especially, there is this feeling that the first half of the game is utterly brilliant, and then the second half of the game does not mimic that. I wish, the question of cohesiveness in video games is still something that is not only difficult to do, but it's expensive, both on like the psyches of the people making the games, but also like literally expensive as in funding. So I get it. Chapter summary, I'm not quite sure if we need any of this. Like a lot of this is gameplay related. I always like grenade launchers in games because I like the geometry of trying to predict the arc. So to me, this would be one of my go-to weapons. Looks like we're in the Depression realm. That's interesting. We didn't spend a lot of time in the bargaining phase. I would have been interested to see more applications to that. Alice steps from the Hall of Doors into the Abyssal Station. Before her eyes, it is darkness in all directions. There are specks of light flickering in the distance. Are they fires or eyes? Faint voices whispering something about the man in the moon. Like an explosion, the infernal train screams past Alice, lighting the scene around her. A morbid subway station made from bits of dollhouses and decorated with a collection of broken doll parts and toys. There was a train station and a train in the Looking Glass. Through the Looking Glass, the second Alice book. I don't remember too much about it. Alice says to her rabbit, whose horrid memories are these? They're certainly not my own. Perhaps not yet. The station windows look out on dirt, dust, ash, and filth. Arms and legs and heads of dolls are buried in layers behind the glass. Interesting. There's a lot of repetition of art design as well. We see this place similar to the way we saw the Queen's Castle, especially. There was some dollhouse looking stuff in the Madness Returns towards the end of the game. And I remember because that's where the length of the game really started to weigh on me, was that world. We also saw, kind of an underwater scene with the mock turtle. We get that here. So I'm of two minds of it. I'll keep going, but I have some thoughts on the repetition of between the two games. The March Hare, welcome back to the Abyss, Alice. So glad to see you again. Behind one of the windows sits the March Hare, screaming into a microphone, waving excitedly at Alice. His eyes are crudely stitched shut. March Hare and Dormouse are the foremen and operators in charge of this area. They throw a series of obstacles at Alice to thwart her progress and block her escape. They blame Alice for their blindness. Stunning. Stunning, but I will say that some of the artwork is starting to take a step back from the stuff at the beginning because of what we talked about. But still, it's really beautiful to look at. Really imaginative, I would say, if not as high fidelity. This feels very Dark Souls, the crystals, that is straight up out of Seath the Scaleless. the fight in that room. I'm getting major vibes from that. Avoid the dormouse's traps. This is a hard-gated area. We play as Alice navigates the scene, heading towards the direction indicated by her inner compass to locate the eyes. There are several exits from the station, all leading through roughly cut holes in the walls of the station. These become dirt passages descending into a vertical cave-like structure. Alice enters a termite mining colony, buried beneath the memory tree of Alice's mind. Alcoves and chambers filled with fungi and mushrooms, dug out of the rotting material of Alice's memories. Giant termite drones fly through the air over her head, carrying bundles of dirt. To and fro, mechanical conveyor belts and rusted hulks of mining machinery whir and grind throughout the place. Here, fragments of Alice's past are half revealed in a vertical catacomb of detritus. There's a lot of death in the Depression realm already. These underground caverns. It feels like burial. It feels like Alice is not fantasizing, but just thinking about her family buried. This is where memories go to be recycled into the fertilizer that feeds imagination. Every chamber in the colony can be explored in any direction, but the colony cannot be escaped until a certain sequence of events is completed. Alice's objectives: uncover the central meaning of the memory scenes contained in the chambers and release it from the colony. This is accomplished via exploration of a series of visual puzzles involving pattern matching, colors, and optical illusions. As she explores, Alice discovers a mixture of happier earlier memories, which are neglected, broken, lost, or misplaced. When Alice allows these memories to be processed, her barred progress through the minds is allowed. As Alice explores the minds of memory, she will begin to encounter broken, wrecked, and burnt machinery. The further she goes, Alice will encounter pulsating dark veins of ore. Shadow wisps from them. These dark trails lead Alice to memories that are unfamiliar to her, wreathed in bracken amorphous darkness. These are the memories of the shadow. Veins of pulsating darkness beat, bleed, and echo from these memories, as if something is being drained or siphoned from them. Onyx and obsidian ore jaggedly protrude from the cave walls around the memories. The dark ore forms spiraling symbols and arcane runic shapes. Whispers hypnotically draw Alice to enter these nightmarish memories. All other sounds fade as Alice approaches, as her tiny plush rabbit desperately pulls at her to stop her from entering. Alice cannot withstand the siren call. Cannot withstand? Maybe cannot avoid. This is really stunning, so we're going to have to find a way to... Echoes of Darkness is 4.2. Crying Alice, Weeping of Tears, a leitmotif that we've seen throughout the game and throughout Alice Madness Returns, honestly. What else do I want to say? It seems like if we're looking at the darkness memories, this is kind of showing repressed aspects of her memory that she would prefer to have unresolved. Maybe that's what's going on. We'll need to read more to find out. In the Depression realm, a truth in your suffering. I haven't been reading these subtitles. Perhaps I should have been. Upon entering the first dark memory, Bumby and Radcliffe take center stage. Once again, these are the doctors at the mental hospital. Play music via YouTube. Each of these scenes is contained within a room of warped dimensions. See non-Euclidean geometry game demos, so that a hallucinatory experience of crossing through these large and dense scenes take place within a relatively short time and space. Each scene is separated by a section of normal geometry and materials, allowing Alice a moment to reflect on the previous scene and to look around at the structure of the space where these scenes are contained. So, kind of a manifestation of the unconscious. The shadow does not want these memories to be processed, repression, because once processed, they form the basis for growth beyond the trauma. That's true. When Freud was investigating hysterical symptoms in patients, realizing that a lot of hysterical symptoms came out of child abuse, a lot of these symptoms dissipated, and they began to have a more stable life. So, similar things. She uses the space as a gallery of pain and draws her power from it. Pretty incredible artwork here. A theme of eyes, being able to see. What cannot be seen. Hard-gated area, deeper into darkness, navigate the memories of the shadow. We play as Alice follows ghostly visions and memories of the shadow, unlike the memories she has seen prior. These memories of Bumby and Radcliffe are bathed in darkness. The dark actors' movements are jittery, broken, and erratic. Their limbs are off proportion. Both men have no eyes, only deep black recesses where their pupils should be. Once again, a theme of denial. Their voices pierce the air, ranging from hushed whispers to gasping roars. As Alice moves through the environment, she overhears conversation critical to her quest. Flashes of the night Alice was taken to the hospital. Scale is distorted to create a sense of vertigo, smallness, and distance. Interactive cutscenes and playable environments reveal giant beds, warped hospital rooms, giant scalpels. Her family relatives are tiny and far away in the sky, looking down on her among lots of other giant faces. Massive pill bottles, gauze for clouds, trolleys, dead bodies, under covers. What did Alice fear most about this period in these scenes? The lack of family, not knowing where she was, feeling lost and alone, feeling small. These are dreadful memories. Again, Bumby and Radcliffe take center stage, saying, "Insanity is the best option." Radcliffe continues the conversation. "Indeed, no time for sloppiness, Angus. Handle your vices. Keep the services you offer our clients intact. With the girl as my ward, her estate is mine. Feed the supply, contain her mind. I'll handle the rest." Okay, so Radcliffe and Bumby have motive for why, they wanted to possess the family estate. So one of the themes you could say about the story is the troubles of inheritance, of what you inherit being taken or co-opted, or a kind of guilt about what is being inherited, I wonder. Since Alice's entire family dies, all of that wealth and aristocracy was provided to Alice. And even if this malevolent force didn't exist, you could make the case that that this is a kind of depressive melancholy of she's projecting inside herself that sad, sick glee that is part of her that gets that inheritance from her family. She's projecting that onto this Radcliffe and Bumby character as a way to not admit to herself that ambivalent state of her family's death is part of the grieving process. I do not know where to put my head here. A lot of this stuff is really stunning. We play as we again follow another apparition of Alice as she has an outer body experience. Okay, out of body experience. I'm quite sure that it's not outer body, it's out of body, but semantics, narcissism of minimal differences. Witnessing the shadow's memory, she follows herself in flashes of the asylum. Alice bound to a stretcher, thrashing as she is rolled through the entrance. Nurses and doctors whispering and staring as she's wheeled through the corridors filled with the shouts and screams of insanity. Alice hears a voice. It is her own, but it is warped, breathless and desperate. This is the shadow, her doppelganger. At that time, you were already acting as my guardian. Having me committed to the asylum was easy. Who would you believe? The family lawyer and the doctor? Or the raving mad child everyone now believed had burned her family to death? We play as Alice walks the corridors of Rutledge Asylum. Everywhere are signs of neglect, decay, madness, and cruelty. Alice, this is not a place for curing insanity. It's a prison designed to drive one mad. Okay, so critiques of confinement, pretty much right in that moment. The path leads past various rooms and corridors where we see variations on Alice as routine in the asylum. Putrid mealtimes, bouts of uncontrolled rage, cruel interactions with doctors, nurses, and psychologists, playing with the other insane children. A final room where Alice is bound to a bed, staring catatonic, clutching her rabbit. Her head is bald and she is drooling. Like she got a lobotomy? Heavily medicated. Okay. Her eyes rolled back into her skull. I could see that. Early medications produced a zombie-like effect. I mean, modern medications still do, but I think the dosages were far worse back then. Here we don't get full-on concept art, but we do get, like, sketches, you know, some ideas. I need to move my camera. The broken voice continues at times, sounding on the verge of breaking down. The shadow. The days passed into months, the months into years, and many of those years were spent in a state far removed from reality. That must have made you feel at ease. No one believes insane children in their make-believe. Let's see, we have two... Okay, the arrow's telling me to read the left first. Duh. Flashes of Alice's drawings, sketches on paper scratched into the walls of her cell, carved into the flesh of her arms. Oh, maybe that's what the sketches are up there. Our first glimpse of Wonderland and its inhabitants. Okay, so they explicitly pair the two here by saying that Alice's Wonderland is a figment of her imagination. But this fiction is designed to get her answers. But in my make-believe was your undoing. Suddenly the shadow enters the cell, spawning from the darkness of the walls. Enraged, the shadow shudders spasmodically. She immediately takes over the entire scene, engulfing the area in thick black smoke, brimming with anger and fury at the intrusion of Alice. The shadow, what are you doing, little girl? This place is mine. Get out. Alice, these are your memories. Why relive these horrible experiences? I gotta admit, I'm a big fan of the shadow design here. I think it looks really cool. Getting like dishwasher vampire smile vibes from it. Just how emo it is. Let's get me back here. The shadow we all must eat to survive. Dark, pulsing onyx ore stems from the dark memory and transfers its mass into the cracks and swirls in the shadow's arms. These horrible memories gave her strength. Staring into the eyes of Alice, the shadow continues. The shadow. Perhaps it's time for you to taste some of my favorite horrors. The shadow places a clawed hand on Alice, and Alice is again suddenly pulled deeper into another memory. The architecture around her sways drunkenly. Sounds warp and distort as Alice reels in her own darkness. Scenes of Bumby in the Houndstitch Home for Wayward Children played out. He is cross-examining and talking to Alice in a counseling session. Dr. Angus Bumby. The cost of forgetting is high, Alice. Insane children dolls now wander around Alice in a deranged circle. They sing and dance. Some dolls are half-dressed or have no clothing. Others have numbered cards nailed into them and are missing parts. They all bleed. Radcliffe is seen counting the insane children on a bone abacus as they are whisked away by rotten puppet hands. Radcliffe's hands are soaked in blood as he greedily pockets large wads of filthy, greasy, and oily money with a multitude of gangling limbs. A dark, ruinous oil drips from Alice's eyes and from her mouth. She cannot speak. No one can hear her as she gurgles softly. She begins to drown in spasm. The infernal train rockets past the windows and breaks through the wall, and the hellish scene is destroyed. Bumby's and Radcliffe's laugh can be heard as Alice plummets deeper and deeper into darkness. We could speak a little bit about the nightmare concepts here. In particular, I think the Dr. Bumby concept feels very... We get like a male and female overdetermination here. So like the Radcliffe concept gives me very vagina dentata of just this giant like labile flap. You know, you've got the vaginal center. And then with Dr. Bumby, you get this, like, haunting centaur, this kind of, like, masculinity malformed, you know, because you get the horse vibes, like in the Barbie movie, right? Realizing that that horses have some kind of masculine metaphor. I am not sure of if that is the case, and I don't know if that is what Alice sees in these manifestations, what that suggests about her psyche. She's having problems with establishing her own identity. Perhaps since her mother and father were taken from her, she has these lingering questions about identity, and they are replaced with these malformed, horrific entities. I'm not sure. I think a more practiced person would probably be able to speak further on that. A lot of this feels like a very important part of the story, though. We get a lot of why Alice is where she's at now. A lot of this was the same in Alice the Madness Returns, unfortunately. Not a lot of new territory here. We place Alice lands face first into the dust. Alice spits a wad of blood onto splintered floorboards. She's now in a dress made of odd, mismatched fabrics. Her rabbit is nowhere to be seen. She is alone here. All is silent. Bar the rusty clink of an overhead chain. Alice looks up to see skewered dolls impaled on hooks and nails, swaying back and forth along a conveyor. Scissors, doll parts, threads, and needles litter the area. Movement can be seen in the pitch black ahead. As Alice gets to her feet, a monstrous apparition of Bumby lurches forward from the shadows. It carries a book bound in a pale skin and flesh in its horrible hands. The pages turn and flutter as he speaks. Dr. Angus Bumby, the doll maker. Hush now, Alice. You've told your tale. It's time to listen to something new. I was once like you. Ugh, cliche. Born in chaos. An orphan of sorts. Mummy was mad, insane really, laudanum, hysteria, and carnal urges. Pa, a taxidermist. By the way, this is not a good therapeutic move, is to reduce a patient's trauma with a comparison with your own. It's like it's a denial of their having it bad by just giving an opportunity to talk about yourself. Like, very much a no-no. A taxidermist obsessed with restoring life to the dead. His mistake. The dead can only rot, like Mummy rotted. But the living can be made clean. Dolls are clean. That's the trick, girl. The moonbeam magic. Start from within and make everything clean. Clean and hollow. It's a very obsessive, compulsive reaction to trauma. Our minds, that is where the cleansing must occur. Okay, definitely. So, obsessive compulsive acts, that kind of repetition compulsion of constantly cleaning things, sometimes it stems from the feeling that you're having impure thoughts and you're punishing yourself by doing these compulsive cleaning acts, because it seems like the patient is hoping that if they keep everything clean on the outside, that it will follow suit on those impure thoughts on the inside. You're an excellent example, spattered in blood and wearing chaos like a badge of honor, but you know nothing of true chaos. If you did, you'd do as I've done and dedicate your life to its complete eradication. The blade you rammed through your enemies, an instrument of filth and corruption. It does not sterilize, quite the opposite. It spreads filth and horror from whatever it touches, just like Pa. That's your mistake, too. Do you really think you killed me? The taxidermist might agree, but we're beyond all that. No, Alice, we're in the realm of Mr. Dream Man. Sing with me, Alice. The train is coming with its shiny cars, with comfy seats and wheels of stars, so hush, my little ones, and have no fear. The man in the moon is the engineer. It may seem at first glance like Bumby's trick of cleanliness is the way to go, but unfortunately, from what I've learned, therapy consists in not cleaning or denying or rejecting what's on the inside by these symptoms or tics of repetition on the outside. As much as I love something like cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think can work, I'm not suggesting that it's completely immobile, but I think, in my opinion, true breakthroughs come from kind of getting into the muck, like sifting through it and really trying to analyze and interpret why it seems to be dirty, if that makes sense. Let me move my camera. So I think that's the difference between Bumby as the antagonist and Alice as the protagonist in this story, is that Alice is using her imagination as a frame for proper mourning. And so she is using it and going through that process. And yes, it is hard. Yes, it's painful. But she's achieving breakthroughs. She's learning about herself, and she's also learning about the world that she has imagined for herself. As he sings, Bumby's hands sway hypnotically. Tied to a swinging thread, he produces a bloody and oddly shaped pocket watch. It does not tick. It is frozen in time. Alice's eyes widen as she looks on in horror. Trapped within the glass of the watch, screaming to get out, is Lizzie. Alice's sister is terrified as she bangs her fists on the glass, trying to escape. Lizzie screams. The past must be paid for, Alice. She is mine, forever in time, and there's nothing you can do to change it. Her fate is sealed, and it's all your fault. Bumby's voice turns to a guttural roar as a boss battle begins. We play as Alice, and she'll need to survive an onslaught of violent attacks. He clutches the clock containing Alice's sister and uses it to attack Alice at times. He never lets it go. Alice must dodge his blows and strike his weak points in order to endure a frenzied but short boss fight. And here we just get some concept art. So I will move my camera so you can see each part. I kind of want to move my camera all the way out so you can see it in full, just to give you an idea. A lot of boss fights have this perspective. I believe in Dark Souls 3, there is a boss fight similar to this where you're kind of striking the hands as it's crawling up this inclined plane. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really fought enough bosses like this to really have a say. And of course, since it's concept art and since it remains in conceptual form, we really don't know how that would have panned out. So the doll maker, some great concept art here. This reminds me of The Matrix, of when Neo pushes Agent Smith and then jumps out of the way. I feel like this happens in a lot of movies, action movies, where they need to figure out a way to not just get rid of the bad guy, but eradicate his or her body. And so we'll place them in a position like this where a train comes by and totally just like, considering that trains are often metaphors for film, it'll whisk the enemy out of frame. So, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Matrix, I'm trying to think of others. Clearly, I'm sure you can think of one or two just now. Chapter summary, Echoes of Darkness, 4.2. Another dress. A lot of these seem to be more color changes rather than design changes. I like this one just for its austerity. I'm not quite sure what it says about this realm other than just as a garment of mourning. As Alice's darkness and history is uncovered, her mind and memories do not remain unscathed. Navigating her own sorrow takes a toll. Where a mind was once guided by hope and bright lies, the realities of evil begin to cast shadows in Alice's psyche, which in turn project to her appearance. Okay, yeah, so she is suffering from overwhelming sadness about how she got here, right? We are back to the slumber, and there's some really great concept art here. Not as much depth in the concept art, but still some great artistry going on here. We're back with the hookah smoking caterpillar. An establishing cutscene plays while Alice gasps as she arrives in the slumber realm. Breathless, Alice looks down at her feet to see a snow globe broken and shattered at her feet. Caterpillar watches solemnly and silently as sad realization dawns on Alice. She speaks. Alice, my shadow killed my family's murderer. The death of my family was only the beginning. I was spared her pain. The caterpillar. You were also spared her experience. The monster she killed deserved his fate. But in killing him, she sealed her own. His darkness was transferred to her, and now lives on through the shadow. It will consume her and you. Okay, interesting. I'm trying to remember what happens at the end of Madness Returns. Because I think, if we have more to play here in this game, that sort of implies that this is kind of like a 1.5 version of Madness Returns. Like there is more to be had. And that could be interesting. Alice, can't she be stopped? Caterpillar, to stop her is to kill her, but she has a purpose. She brought you this far and kept you safe, sealed away and repressed under the waves of her torment. You never saw or experienced what she did until now. Alice, her memories are horrible. Caterpillar, you see what has made her, what has hurt her. Now it's your turn to keep her safe. She is blinded by her suffering, Alice. Where her rage once severed and abandoned you, she now seeks to sway you in her favor. Alice, why? Why do I matter to her? Caterpillar, you are her conscience, Alice. You are her reason. You are her kindness. You have long since been forgotten, but she seeks to make you let go of what you hold. You stand in her way. This is why you have been protected until you were needed most. So, I'll finish this scene and then I'll talk. I'm starting to think she has a point. This is Alice. Her rage is justified by these horrors. Caterpillar, perhaps, but do monstrous deeds inflicted warrant more monstrous created? Alice thinks on this as the scene washes away and cuts back to exploration of the mines. A couple things. So, I guess, first of all, I did not expect the caterpillar to have this much of a role in the game. I sort of imagined that the Cheshire Cat would be this role in this game. I sort of understand why, narratively, the caterpillar is in Alice in Wonderland, but isn't a leitmotif in the same way that the Cheshire Cat, because the Cheshire Cat appears multiple times in Alice. First, as she makes her way to the Mad Tea Party. Second, at the croquet ground in the Rose Garden. Second, you get the sense that this Alice, the good Alice that's split, is the one that was lost in the psychotic break, and that the shadow is the one who has been performing out in reality. And so what you're playing is the whole stable self before the psychotic break trying to return to create a whole cohesive self, which is a nice reversal. Like, I thought that this is reality Alice trying to recover psychotic Alice, when in fact the psychotic Alice seems to be the one that's been running the show out in reality, based on what we saw. And so I like that. I like that reversal. We're still in the depression realm. We're in 4.3. The Mines of Memory. A past buried in shadows. So we're dealing with more repressed memories. As Alice lands back in the mines, some beautiful concept art here. Let me see if I can get you to see that in its full. She's reunited with her rabbit. Surveying the scene outside of the shadow's memories, Alice locates a rusted teapot cannon embedded and protruding from the ore. Taking the weapon, the teapot cannon is an area of effect long-range launcher, capable of firing massive globes of boiling pressurized tea at a distance. The secondary fire allows Alice to pour boiling hot tea on the ground as she walks. These puddles bubble and burn her enemies in a floor trap until the tea cools and it dissipates after time has passed. Yeah, so this teapot cannon has too similar of a set of behaviors as the previous teapot weapon that we got. I think these should have been combined into one larger weapon. A teapot grenade launcher and also this floor trap mechanism. I think in the Batman games, something similar to that one of the weapons was similar to that. I'm trying to think, and I can't think of it just now. The surrounding space and scenes are home to enemies of broken dolls and hybrid insects, and obstacles of logic and spatial puzzles. The overall theme of the area outside of the memory scenes is a dangerous old mine. This creates gating and resistance as Alice moves through the area. As Alice journeys through the mine, she'll be guided by her inner compass and her rabbit to find the eyes. This is a dark place where it is literally difficult to see. This realm is controlled by the March Hare and the Dormouse, both of whom relentlessly taunt and blame Alice for their inability to see. Got some new enemies. Man, so many different types of enemies with different animations. This game would have been so difficult artistically. Dormouse and March Hare have done a terrible job of maintaining the mines. Things are clogged and broken. The mines are stalled and do not process any memories. Memories are left behind and hidden to feed the shadow. Alice will restore the machinery and allow it to process memories, thereby restoring healthy function to the mines. It's a nice metaphorization to Alice's own psyche, right? Restoring function to these channels. I'm getting like Inside Out vibes from Pixar, of course with a darker twist. Having overcome the surrounding obstacles, Alice confronts Dormouse and March Hare at the top of the mines. Because they are blind, they've used the eyes as a means to see Alice through a series of mechanical lenses scattered around the mines. As Alice progresses through the mines, she knocks out these lenses until the mouse and Hare can no longer see. A boss battle takes place at the top of the mine directly underneath the roots of the memory tree. A large chamber filled with lenses, dark corridors, memory debris, and shifting floors on a ring platform. Alice engages Mouse and Hare. Here they scream. This is the Dormouse. All memories can still hurt you, Missy. We'll make sure of it. From one of the memories emerges a massive steam tea-powered mecha, formerly from a memory of a previous visit to Hatter's Domain. A wild boss fight ensues under the maw of the memory tree. Alice combats the mecha and the two rodents, eventually defeating them. As they are recycled, the mecha and Dormouse and March Hare are both consumed by the maw under the memory tree. Boss Battle 8. I will show you some of the art here, and then we will move on, just because there's something to read here. Alice places her hands on the eyes, claiming her prize and heading for the exit. Before Alice can escape, she's pulled up into the memory recycling system, an ethereal and glimmering abundance of massive swaying tree roots, and enters into a surreal encounter with the caterpillar. Again, that seems so soon. I guess they implied that the mines that you would go through would be very involved. There'd be a lot of like different puzzles of trying to and like exploration of getting through the broken mines. We have a chapter summary. I'll leave my camera here. Yeah, even the description of the teapot cannon here looks very similar to the grenade launcher we saw earlier. So I have my doubts that this would be a weapon. Either that or the previous weapon would make it to the final product. I think those two could be combined, and that would save the game a lot of trouble trying to create these combat rooms and combat puzzles that provided opportunities to use those both. I'm not sure. We're back in the slumber. Transformation. I don't think that's a stage of grief. Another encounter with the caterpillar where the theme is the power of transformation. As Alice explores the scene, the caterpillar narrates. I think this is stunning. I think this image right here that you can see on the right, just like wallpaper stuff, man. There's so many good things that could be a wallpaper. I would love to have this image as a wallpaper on my monitor. I think just the depth of it, the rule of thirds. I love images that convey that much depth within its image, and just the heroic pose. A lot of great imaginative qualities here. I think really stunning art, and that's the one kernel I think that is reminding me of how cool of a game this would have been. Caterpillar, we cannot undo what's been done, but we can take every passing moment as a chance to change course. That's true. We play as Alice follows an older memory of herself through the streets of London. The version Alice follows is the same as who pushed Bumby in front of the train. Alice witnesses the elation of her memory, having rid herself of her tormentor. Alice watches her memory as she wanders through London. Mushrooms and beautiful foliage sprout from the walls and brickwork of London. All is magic, serene, and happy. Her memory is satisfied. Caterpillar again. The sound of his bones cracking played over and over again in her mind. The final violent expulsion of air from his lungs as he was crushed by the train. It was well deserved. Her elation and his demise quickly turned into something else, something new. As Alice floats in Lunderland, blissfully the sound dims, a whisper is heard than many others. Watching as passers-by turn to look at Alice, more and more London inhabitants stop their walking. They stare at Alice. Their mouths do not move, but she hears their thoughts. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're definitely going to want to see this transformation of all four of these. From day to night, done so quickly, I think. Following your memories, soft-gated area, exploration, only it looks like. Outstretching her arm, Alice reaches out to calm the whispers inside her head. They obey, if just for a second. Then a crash of shattering glass is heard. Bumby's laughter echoes. Caterpillar, she felt something break inside. An undeniable darkness took hold and spread. A cutscene plays as Alice's beautiful experiences turn horrid. Cracks appear in the walls. The mushrooms and magical sprouts rot, wither, and die. Alice can only gaze and wonder as dark swirling voids appear, finally consuming the rotting foliage as darkness spreads. Alice follows her memory. The apparition recoils, holds her temples, and begins to panic. We play as day turns to night, as Alice wanders through the flesh hellscape, following after her memory. She arrives at the Houndstitch Home for Wayward Children to find Radcliffe there, surrounded by orphans and talking to the police. A cutscene takes place upon her arrival. Give you some chance to look at that before we move on. Interesting. Interesting art. We'll have to see what's going on in this art based on the story that we're given here. Arriving on the steps of Houndstitch Home for Wayward Children, we witness a memory wherein Alice is confronted by Radcliffe with a platoon of policemen, Policeman 1 and Policeman 2, at his side. Radcliffe, that's her. She's the one, officer. Arrest her immediately. Radcliffe furiously waves his little black book in the direction of Alice's approach. The policeman continues. Policeman 1, now, sir, we'll get the facts and find her killer. Find the killer. You leave that to us. Radcliffe, imbecile. She can't just be left to wander the streets. She's a killer. An insane person, certified. Only released from the asylum because I allowed it. Put her back in. As Alice steps closer, Radcliffe points a shaking figure. Radcliffe, you stop right there. As the purveyor of this establishment and the responsible agent for the protection of these products, children, you are hereby informed of your expulsion from the Home for Wayward Children. Do you hear that, officer? She's not to take one step inside the building. Alice breaks down crying, overcome by the murder and the reality of what she's done. In her sorrow, a whisper begins to manifest. Only Alice can hear. It's the voice of Radcliffe. He stares at Alice through a sweating, furious frown. His lips tremble, but his mouth does not move. Radcliffe, internal thoughts. Angus is dead. I know you killed him, but you'll never win. You'll never learn the truth. I'll see to it. And you'll never lay a finger on your family's estate. Now I live and breathe. Alice is aghast hearing the words. They are unspoken from Radcliffe, but clear in her mind. As Alice recoils at Radcliffe's thoughts, her shock is met with an echoing shatter. Like shards of mirrors tumbling into nothingness, the grim London street around Alice breaks apart. All Alice sees is Radcliffe surrounded by fire, fury, fire and fury, the Trump story. and horrible manifestations of demons greedily pocketing ill-gotten wealth. He smiles like a devil, his form warping and horrible as bloody coins tumble from outstretched misshapen fingers. He laughs as the gold falls. Alice holds her temples and almost blacks out. She cannot control it. Holding steadfast, darkness wells in her eyes and grits her teeth. The scene rapidly rebuilds back to the dirty London street. Radcliffe, unperturbed, turns his back to her and ushers the children through the door. The cops mutter about wanting to know Alice's whereabouts, while warning her not to leave the district. Policeman 2, we'll be speaking of everyone of interest, miss. That man there thinks you should be at the top of our list. What have you got to say for yourself? What proof do you have of your innocence? Alice quietly, proof? Simply a matter of perspective on the crimes. Her voice trails distantly as she sways, unsteady on her feet. Caterpillar, Radcliffe blamed her. Though he didn't have the evidence, he knew it was her, just as she knew it was him. His guilt, his compliance, his mind and her memories spoke more than his mouth ever could. Alice looks up to watch as Radcliffe closes the door. Their eyes meet. For it seems like an eternity. Radcliffe blinks and his eyes dart side to side. Hers continue to darken in fury. Caterpillar, now she knew. He had been in on it all along. The shadow's hand claw out from Alice towards Radcliffe, but only we can see. Radcliffe slams the door shut. Alice, surrounded by encroaching police and wrought with rage, wrestles free from their grasp and runs down the street. The policemen yell behind her. They pursue as the scene ends. The sound of their screams snap us back to the scene with Alice and the caterpillar. Alice, she intends to kill again, my shadow, after Bumby. She believes Radcliffe deserves to die. Caterpillar, and then the transformation will be complete. Darkness always begets more darkness. What do you believe, Alice? What do you see? Alice does not have a chance to answer as we zoom into her eyes. A teardrop forms. The slumber encounter ends as the droplet falls, dropping into a calm azure pond. Panning up, the scene cuts to a gargantuan lush tree, its leaves bristling in the breeze within the Vale of Tears. Chapter end. Still in the Depression realm. My goodness, this is stunning. I love that dress. It's very bridal. The white. And then that kind of, I don't know what to call it, lace. That lace sleeve. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. But, wow. The Garden of Eden like overgrowth here is really interesting. Okay, we'll talk about it more here in a bit. Okay, back. So we're still on chapter 4 of 12. If I'm not mistaken, there are 12. Complete narrative and gameplay experience. I think we're past halfway as far as like raw material, but clearly, chapter 4 of 12 would imply that we're only a third of the way through. Some beautiful artistry here. Still in the Depression realm. Truth blossoms. I'll read. Focusing on a branch of the tree, Alice blossoms from the stem, starting as a flower and then blooming into a girl. We play as Alice continues her descent safely to the ground, jumping from flower, petal to leaf to branch, and proceeds on her way. The eyes sit at the bottom of a small, calm pond, dotted amongst the foliage of the vale. Alice reaches in and retrieves the eyes from a pool of tears. Both the pool of tears and talking flowers, or like sentient flowers, were part of the Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Like the talking tiger lily, for example. Having repaired the memory tree and now able to see clearly, Alice's memories now flow and are processed properly. As the beautiful tree above Alice blossoms and blooms, all manner of memories, happy, sad, dark, and light, are processed. Alice is racked with emotions. A flash of memories of her own and that of the shadows flow and ebb through Alice's mind. Gazing back at her reflection in the pool, she spies the reflection of the shadow staring back at her, but neither flinches. A moment of somber thought, and Alice places a finger on her reflection in the water. It points back as she breaks the water. As the ripples subside, Alice is left looking at her own glum reflection in the water. The shadow has gone. Deep in thought, Alice spies an upright, ornate door frame nestled amongst the flowers. Opening the door, Alice heads back to the Hall of Doors. Okay, so back to the hub area. Maybe I should have stopped just a bit later, because I feel like that was kind of the end of an era. That was sort of an epilogue. Some cool stuff here. I'm a fan of the dress, like I said earlier. Something bridal about it. Let's see what they have to say about it. Torn in different directions, Alice's doubt begins to turn to understanding. Beneath the waves of retirement, Alice's mind races to steady the sails and brave the coming storm. There's a lot of abstract, empty speech in these lines that really pad out the runtime. That would have made me less hopeful for this game. I feel like it would have been just as bloated as Madness Returns. Adapting and changing Alice's attire reflects the nature of someone becoming one with the self, yet still with no inner peace in sight. Interesting, art here with the skeleton. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, because I don't know what the context of it is. It just says Veil of Tears, the Abyssal Station, Memory Tree, Mecha Boss, I'm sorry. Dark Memories, Clogged Minds, Abyssal Station. It's like a dead corpse with different parts of what we've seen throughout the game labeled onto it. I must have missed something, because I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to glean here. We have 8 of the 12 alchemy runes in the weapons. So as far as gameplay mechanics, we're quite far through this. Oh, wow. Hatter's Workshop, upgrade and experience leveling intermission. Yeah, I don't know about this, hub area. I feel like we've gotten back here. We started here very late and got back here very late. There would definitely have to be some reconceptualization of getting here sooner and getting back to here more often. There's some pacing issues, I think, with what's going on here. We play as Alice steps from the Hall of Doors and quickly makes her way to the Hatter's Workshop. There she returns the second fragment piece, the Eyes, and is allowed a chance to equip items, upgrade weaponry. Equip items. So it has to be done here. You can't just equip and unequip at your leisure. Restock weapons and supplies. Hunter is busy tinkering away. He offers new upgrades and inventions for Alice's perusal in exchange for prima materia Alice has collected on her way. Hunter warns Alice of time running out. To save Wonderland, the chaos clock continues to be consumed. Tick-tock, only 3 moons remain. Prepared for the next adventure, she returns to the Hall of Doors. And we have Chapter 5, The Veil of Tears. We're still in the depression realm. We're all sad here, instead of we're all mad here. A nice play on what the Cheshire Cat usually says. The often quoted, "We're all mad here" from Alice in Wonderland. Find the missing fragment, the brain. We're looking for the brain. I don't have much more to add. Very beautiful artwork. I'm kind of covering up the snail here. There we go. We play as Alice steps from the Hall of Doors into the Veil of Tears. The scene before her is a riot of dense green vegetation and towering mushrooms. Everything is illuminated by glittering shafts of moonlight piercing through the canopy. Butterflies and bees float overhead, while ants and spiders occupy the ground and leaves and the spaces between. Giant raindrops sparkle in the dense air, all of it frozen in time like a living painting. Gosh, it is really beautiful. Once again, after some exploration, it is clear Alice is emotionally processing. The Cheshire Cat appears and talks with Alice. Cheshire Cat, you seem a bit wilted, Alice. Despite all your gadgets, are you still unsure which path is the right one? Alice, I'm confused, Cat, my shadow. She does horrible things, but they seem justified. Her rage and destruction, she doesn't want anything anymore. only for it to end. Let's put myself down here. Cheshire, quite right. A tangled mess that requires unraveling. I believe it will be up to you whether you see it fit to challenge her or help her burn things to the ground entirely. Alice, voice trailing and distant. I'm not quite sure either is the right path. We share memories now, all of them. I need time. Cheshire Cat, be sure to use wisely then. Time is fleeting, and the only commodity that cannot be replenished. Master the bubble of influence is the objective. We play as Alice navigates the scene, heading towards the direction indicated by her inner compass. Along the way, she encounters a variety of bizarre woodland creatures frozen in place, who spring to life with Alice's passing. Alice carries with her a bubble of influence, which is represented as a sunlight effect related to her dress. Time resumes inside its proximity and freezes again once she passes. The chaos is also here, converting woodland creatures into enemies Alice must defeat. The vast majority of Alice's aggressors are chaos-infected and consumed reptiles. Snakes, lizards, newts, turtles, and alligators form the ranks that attack Alice here. The chaos operates outside of frozen time, another facet that cannot be controlled. It converts frozen creatures into enemies, who will always attack Alice at will. Platform puzzles form a series of obstacles to Alice's progress, designed around the unique physical environment created by the stoppage of time. In one area, Alice jumps and swims upward through suspended water droplets, their static behavior disrupted by her passing. In another location, levers and bridges are unfrozen by Alice's actions and presence, then refrozen as she moves away from them. Eventually, Alice will encounter Mock Turtle is waiting on the path ahead, also frozen in time and place. As Alice draws near, he unfreezes and a cutscene begins. Mock Turtle, oh thank goodness you're here. My nose has been itching for what feels like 1,000 years. Alice. You again. Back to torment and bully me? I'm already getting enough trouble from other reptiles in these woods. And I'll make myself clear there's no circus for me to return to. No lines for me to sing. My path is my own. Ooh. So, before I keep going with this scene, at the end of each of these things, it says chapter end, which I think was a misnomer. Because, do we get to the chapter end on this other side? No. Really it needs to say, act end or, section end, because when I was introduced to the mechanics of this game, I was under the impression that the chapters are the major 12 segments. And what we're getting here is, section. It's such a minor semantic thing, but that's pretty much all I care about, I guess. It's the only thing I can really critique is semantics. Alice and the Mock Turtle continue their peculiar conversation amongst the bubbling brooks of the Vale of Tears. Alice eyes Mock Turtle with suspicion as they both descend into a familiar spiral of nonsense together. Mock Turtle, that's good to know. You seem very much you, much more than I was me, when you met the last me, I'm sure. But then again, I'm as much me as I can be today. Are you certain you're you? Alice, what I'm certain of, given how ridiculous you are, is I can only surmise you are indeed the real Mock Turtle and not another lie. Be useful. Tell me what has happened here. Mock Turtle. Am I? Sharp words. Good thing I'm thick of shell. It takes a lot to crack this one. Mock Turtle taps on his shell with a flipper. Mock Turtle, in regards to the environs, night fell and the sun never returned. The flow of time slowed and then everything stopped. Something is holding us all back. We must restore the natural flow of things. The Duchess might know how. She's far, shrewder than I. And twice the appetite, no doubt. Alice, very well. I'll have to pay her a visit. Judging by my horrid memories, we might have to bring something else for supper, lest we find ourselves on her menu. Chaos-infected pig corpses is one of the images. Don't really say that phrase very often in life. Chaos-infected pig corpses. So we'll let that play around in our brain. We play as Alice navigates the timeless vale with Turtle in tow. He acts as a raft, assisting Alice to navigate the areas and flow of water where she cannot alone. Along the way, she encounters more combat sections with chaos creatures and more physical obstacles and puzzles built around the unique behavior of time in this area. Wherever chaos is encountered, squeals of pigs are heard and the corpses of dead pig-man hybrids are found. The pigs are torn apart, dismembered, and slain, their body parts strewn about in overt displays of ultraviolence by Lana Del Rey. Ultraviolence by the chaos-consumed reptiles. As Alice floats along the perilous streams, surpassing combat arenas and platforming sections, she will eventually glimpse the shadow in the distance. Ultraviolence is also a difficulty in the Doom games. Tearing a pigman apart on a tiny island, the shadow is crying as she does so, destroying blindly in her sorrow. As Alice meets the tearful gaze of the shadow, Mock Turtle panics and recoils in horror. Alice is flung from his shell, crashing her head against a rock. Alice's body ragdolls downstream through the rapids. Her head above the flow moments before Alice blacks out entirely. She witnesses Mock Turtle in the cruel grasp of the shadow. He blubbers and struggles hopelessly, but is quickly consumed in a tangled mass of darkness as his scream fades into the sound of rushing water. My God. Rated M for mature. Oh, the Duchess, the Duchess. I shall be too late. Pig and Pepper is the name of the chapter in Alice where she meets the Duchess. It's a very aggravating chapter, very chaotic. A crying baby is not being attended to in this moment. The mourning veil, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, and as you can see, the Duchess has a veil of her own. Alice's eyes open with a gasp. Darkness turns into light piercing from the canopy of the Veil of Tears. Alice is washed up downstream. Hopefully you get that, on the riverbank. Calm water laps at the edge as she splutters and pulls herself to her feet. She has arrived in front of an odd cottage, emblazoned with pig effigies. The Duchess's cottage is surrounded by its own bubble of influence. Time flows freely here. Pigs squeal, announcing Alice's arrival. The Duchess fiercely guards her cottage from within. Freshly dug graves marked with hooves, snouts, and curled tails are everywhere. The cottage resembles a mausoleum, a place of death and mourning. Some pig bodies are in open coffins. As Alice approaches, a cutscene plays. The cottage door slams open, revealing the Duchess. She is in a mourning veil. Spittle flies from the Duchess's mouth. Ugh! As she screams at Alice. The Duchess. Back to finish the task, are you? Slaughtering my children? Vile girl. Alice, no, you are mistaken. I only seek your knowledge. The Duchess. I do not share my secrets with murderers. Your chaos ends here, girl. Alice, please, I am not who you think I am. I do not want to hurt any children. A boss battle. We're going to skip down to the bottom left. If you're interested in looking at the boss battles, like I've said before, that'll be up to you. As Alice lowers her blade, the Duchess's body language and tone softens. The two engage in conversation as the Duchess's tears dry. Alice listens and responds in earnest. Duchess, I had to make sure you were you, Alice. You fight with courage, not blind fury. Alice, I fight for myself and for the truth here. There are things I need to understand. Can you help me? Duchess, this part of you feels that way, at least. Your chaotic other half must have been the culprit of my slaughtered children. Their bodies are still fresh in the ground. The Duchess's eyes are full of tears. She looks upon a twisted painting of herself, gleefully surrounded by hybrid pig children. Duchess, I had to defend who was left, and I'm unsure who to trust. I mourn their loss. Family is a terrible thing to lose. Clearly a repetition from Alice's psyche of her own family. But we must survive with the best parts of them that remain. Memory can be kind and cruel. Alice, I have no family either. How does one endure such loss? What is the answer? Duchess, I'm still not sure, my dear. All I know at first is that crying helps. The Duchess explains to Alice that tears are restorative. Crying helps. Alice needs to collect tears from the purest source of them within the Veil of Tears and bring them back to the kitchen. Oof. Okay, so we have like nested collection goals, right? We're bringing back the brain, but in this section, we also have to bring back tears. I don't know how I feel about that. The Duchess can then cook them into a potion to restore time to the veil. We play as Alice and her rabbit navigates towards the direction her inner compass points her. An opening reveals a massive statue of Alice weeping. Tears flow from its eyes. This is where the purest tears are found. The valley in which it rests is protected by a massive sprouting of talking and singing flowers. Defeating their gnashing teeth and navigating the puzzles and platform sections within the gardens of the Vale, Alice presses on. Wandering up to the massive crying statue and meeting its gaze, a cutscene begins. There is no sound, only a soft breeze as petals blow past. Seeing the crying statue hits Alice with a wave of emotion. Alice stares and begins to shudder. Her breaths are short. Alice, I miss you, Lizzie. Alice begins to cry. I miss you, Mum and Dad. Deep, sorrowful sobs that drop her to her knees. Why did you have to leave? As Alice continues to cry, her tears fall freely and she is transported back into the slumber realm. And then a really stunning, this reminds me very much of the Madness Returns game. That's the chapter end. I feel like we're getting a lot more concept art towards the end here because we have a lot less story to unpack. Really beautiful concept art here. So I'll reveal that. Caterpillar shows up again. Slumber encounter number 7. I guess I'll save some of my thoughts evaluating the game towards the end. We can get through it, and then I can sort of save my judgments until then. Alice's tears fall freely until her surrounds morph into the London night sky. She sits upon a rooftop, Caterpillar by her side. Alice wipes her tears in his presence, and the two speak together gently. Caterpillar, why do you cry, Alice? Alice, I still mourn them. I miss my family. I still blame myself for Lizzie's fate at the hands of that monster. My memories are full of torment, even long after their deaths. The wounds still hurt. These memories from my shadow I share. They are overwhelming. Caterpillar, memories can indeed still hurt. This is the source of her power. Moments frozen and revisited in time, immortalized in suffering. They feed her anger, sustain her rage. She has kept them close. She chooses to be fueled by the ruin of her past, manifesting and giving reason to the darkness and chaos that she now spreads. Alice, I've seen it. I feel it. Caterpillar, memories can be a powerful, constant source of suffering. If you let them be, some are not easily forgotten. Alice, if I am not supposed to forget them, what else can a memory be? Caterpillar, guidance in your choices, Alice. There is always something to learn from our memories. Learning is remembering, so learn. We play as Alice follows the same memory of herself after being expelled from the Houndstitch Home for Wayward Children. The memory of herself that Alice watches is outside Radcliffe's home office. We follow as the memory of Alice evades pursuing police and slips in through a window in the alley undetected. Following behind the scene plays out as Caterpillar narrates. Caterpillar, she'd been here before several times. Once to try to collect her rabbit doll, but her shadow could still not find it. Radcliffe had hidden it. What purpose did he have for such a plaything, a plush rabbit now lost? Radcliffe, forever a cruel ward, treated your other half as always like an unwanted, unloved child, controlled and manipulated, but no more. We play as Radcliffe. Radcliffe's office is explored. Alice follows closely behind the ghostly apparition of herself. As she heads to the second floor, Caterpillar continues. Caterpillar, in the past, your other half had known something was off, and the way he talked and how his eyes always diverted something he held. There's a door on the second floor. We follow closely behind, peering over her own shoulder. The door is locked, but the memory of Alice quickly opens it. It was her fault, always her fault, but tonight she found out it was his. Wandering into the room, all is silent. Bar the tick-tock of a grandfather clock, bookshelves, Baroque paintings, statues. Near the far wall in the center of the room, something on the desk catches Alice's eye. Tick-tock. Walking up to the desk, the object is cloaked in darkness. Tick-tock, Alice reaches to the item cloaked in shadows. As her memory does so, Alice shares the space with her memory, gently overlapping and sharing her place with her memory apparition. Tick-tock, she reaches her hand towards it. Tick-tock, tick-tock. And... oh dear. Screams of horror. A horrible amalgamation of the chaos emerges from the shadows on the desk. Lurching and squelching forward, the gigantic mass reaches out from Radcliffe's office and engulfs the memory of Alice. Her scream is quickly silenced. As Alice turns to run, the hallways shake as the shapeless monster pursues relentlessly. Alice desperately tries to escape, but is caught violently in its fleshy grip. Alice falls into a massive fleshy mass and is horribly crushed. The scene and halls fall apart. Smash cut back to Caterpillar atop his mushroom. Alice is in front of Caterpillar, unharmed but hyperventilating. She was not ready for the truth she found, Caterpillar says, and neither are you. Not yet. A waft of smoke, and the chapter ends. That reminds me very much of the Dark Presence in Alan Wake 2, where every time it seems like Alan Wake is on the precipice of a psychological breakthrough, the Dark Presence is a kind of mechanism that Alan's psyche uses to repress, to deny, to keep him from that breakthrough. It's lashing out, and so there's something similar to that where it seems like Alice was close to figuring out something but was denied it. Wonderland Woods, once again, some beautiful concept art. We're still in the Depression realm. The Crystal Tears, a new key item. So I am going to say that there's not enough cohesiveness in this game. And I don't mean that with the art. I just flat out mean that with the pacing and some of the mechanics. I feel like there needs to be more space. Like, to give you an example, like Legend of Zelda has a time mechanic between adulthood and childhood, and it also has some, it also has Hyrule Field, and I think a lot of those things help to pad out each of the narrative segments, and it would really be up to the developers to try and create some space in between these moments that would allow these moments to breathe a little bit and to give the game a more embodied feeling, because right now it feels very much like a old world narrative linear game. I think a good example would be the difference between Dead Space and the remake. I feel like the Dead Space remake, because it has no loading sequences, had to create spaces that were transitions between each of the chapters or each of the areas. And I suppose that's what I mean, is that I think that the Dead Space remake did that rather well. It doesn't have to be much. It just has to be some sort of a mechanism in the player's mind to know that we're entering a new set piece, we're entering a new chapter. And I think that this game has attempted to do it with the hub area and with key items and with upgrading things, but I can't really see it in a concrete way. I'll continue. Alice arrives back in the Vale of Tears, clutching crystalline tears. After the tears are collected, Alice returns to the Duchess. Now that Alice has used her purest tears, time flows naturally in the Vale. Things are recovering all around her and resuming their natural actions. Before she leaves, Alice addresses the Duchess. Alice, I've encountered horrors I do not understand. My heart aches, and I've cried my eyes out. I guess there's still more to it than that? The Duchess. The horror will be understood when you are ready. Your heart and your eyes have done their job, sweet girl. Next, using your logic and by focusing on the right pieces, a sound mind can handle the rest. Alice, it's time to find one then. The Duchess explains the cure must be taken to a fortress at the center of the Vale. This is where the brain is being kept by a mysterious warlord. Before Alice leaves, the Duchess gifts Alice with a new weapon. The pepper grinder. Wow, it's been a long time in the game since we've gotten the pepper grinder. This was a major weapon in Madness Returns for most, if not all, of the runtime. Surprising. Another cool full-page concept art. Get myself out of the way so you can kind of see it all in action. It's really nice. It's really something. I don't have much to say on it. She's holding 2 knives rather than 1. I wonder if that's a hint at a possible upgrade. You could have dual knives, which would just make it faster, or you would have more combos. Something like that. The key item of the Crystal Tears gives you plot progression and an XP boost, which I think is bizarre. Like, in a linear game, why would you need an XP boost? I suppose if there were upgrades that were cheaper that you couldn't get before, it'll be easier to acquire those now so you can pick up the pace on some things. There's some design notes here. I don't think we read the design notes for the previous section. I'm sorry about that. When considering the creative direction for this area, there was a lot of symbolism we wanted to touch on and overlap in order to form an effective overall design. Initially, the idea was positioning the Serpent's Temple to evoke that feeling of a child wandering into somewhere they normally shouldn't go. You know, serpents being penises, like a phallic symbol. That's not stated. This is me saying it. Somewhere out of bounds, dangerous, and mature. As such, we drew heavily on the notion of Alice walking into her father's workshop. This is somewhere he would conduct his business, and usually alone. Children were not welcome, and to that end, the area would feel foreign or misunderstood from the childlike perspective of Alice and the player. The father's workshop, not the mother's workshop. This design decision was revisited to lean more into a taxidermist workshop, pinning animals to walls and placing rusted tools and broken wood throughout a misshapen garden shed, small from the outside, but a labyrinth once stepped inside. Interesting. Of the boss Bill McGill, we all share a lizard brain. That's a very modern. So the lizard brain is a very modern neuroscientific idea of the regressive brain that is animalistic and is thinking more about fight or flight or hunger or desire, whereas we have this other frontal lobe evaluating realm, which is more focused less on immediacy, instinct, and intuition, and focused more on like analysis, reasoning, and processing. So that's the difference, I would say, between the lizard brain and then our reasoning brain. And it looks like they are incorporating that into the game. Upon battling her way through the Serpent's Temple, Alice arrives in the main hall to find the mysterious warlord perched upon his throne. Alice gasps. She is face to face with an old friend. Oh, Bill McGill the Lizard. There goes Bill. In the books, this is the lizard that Alice kicked in the chimney and shot up into the air. So, I don't... Why the lizard? We'll find out. Alice, this is quite the edifice you've constructed for yourself, Bill. Bill, you and the others always looked down on poor little Bill, didn't you? He was a funny character, but I'm no longer playing that part. It no longer suits me to be small and meaningless. I can think clearly now, and I have realized that I have no limits, and none can be imposed on me. Even the chaos obeys me now. There's more to power than just will, Alice says. What of compassion and feeling? What of your friends, your home? Bill, do you have that? compassion? The self that needs to improve is the one that's doing the improving. You seek to destroy yourself and also maintain yourself at the same time. Look at where you point that blade of yours. Alice, I've seen enough destructive and violent ends from her and from you to know this power only continues a self-fulfilling dark cycle. I need to understand her just like she needs to understand me. Knowledge will serve me more than destruction. Alice brandishes her blade. Alice, you have what I need to understand the truth. Hand it over. Bill, I will never surrender this power willingly, Alice. Take it if you can. A boss fight with Bill takes place. Okay, so I guess the lizard Bill and the lizard brain is the only connective tissue for why we are fighting Bill. I think deep down, I think that was the rationale or the reasoning. And with that, we get the brain. Let's put myself over here. As soon as Alice severs Bill's final connection to the brain, he immediately reverts to being an idiot again and calls off the attack on Alice. He acts like he doesn't know what's going on and is completely unaware of the carnage he's caused. He is a sympathetic, friendly character towards Alice and is not killed. As soon as he loses connection to the brain, he just assumes his dumb old Bill guys. Bill McGill. Thinking I knew it all got me in trouble more than admitting I was dumb. Alice, towering confidence built on sound thinking is more precarious than a humble hut built on an empty plain. At least you learned a bit about yourself. Bill hands the brain over to Alice without any hesitation and leads them out of the area once Alice has the brain. He then waves goodbye to Alice and the Cheshire Cat as if they've just left a tea party at his house. He wishes them well and thanks them for stopping by. As he does this, he realizes he doesn't really know what to do next with his life. Oh well. Alice has a momentary giggle and then focuses. She has recovered the brain. Sunlight and time fled back into the Vale with Alice's passing. With time and the Vale restored, Alice returns to the Hall of Doors, heading back to Hatter's workshop, her mind steady. Back to the Hatter's workshop already. It seems rather quick. Of course, the problem with my diatribe about this lack of space and cohesiveness is that I'm getting the condensed, abridged form from the design Bible. And so a defense could be made that, well, the game would have provided that with the platforming, with the levels, with the puzzles. What I'm thinking more of is the Elden Ring style of you've got your legacy dungeons, and then you have the surrounding open world that connects the legacy dungeon to other forms of content. And I suppose that this is all legacy dungeons without those open world aspects. Not that it needs to be an open world per se, but even Dark Souls has some connective tissue to the areas that is sort of an in-between space. And I suppose that's what I mean. The game could have had that. The game could have maybe not had that. I don't really know how the hub worlds connect to the... are they just doors like Demon Souls? I'm not sure. Alice steps from the Hall of Doors and quickly makes her way to Hatter's workshop. There, she returns the final fragment, the brain, and is allowed a chance to equip items, upgrade weaponry, restock blah, blah, blah. The Hatter is busy tinkering away. It is unclear what he's working on. He offers new upgrades and inventions for Alice's perusal in exchange for the prima materia. It would be interesting if can you go back to previous areas to grind for experience. I'm not sure if the game has talked about allowing that or not. The Hatter. Oh, Alice, all that frozen time got me thinking. Time is not something we can control. Depending on your nature, we all have 3 base responses to animalistic instincts when faced with dire threat. Alice, you think of me as an animal, Hatter. The Hatter, we are all slaves to our base instincts, Alice. What's yours? Fight, flight, or freeze, perhaps? He reveals a new contraption from his workbench. The Hatter, observe. Using the wand, Hatter blasts a tick-tocking mechanical teapot from across the room. It is frozen in place. Blah, blah, blah. The Hatter, I already know you have a handle on fight and flight, Alice. Freezing may not be in your nature. Perhaps it can find a place in your arsenal instead. The Hatter, feel free to hone your skills with it before moving on. Just don't freeze the tea for God's sake. Iced tea. What a mad abomination. A dig at Americans there. It's talking about the ice wand. We don't really need to talk about that. As a gameplay mechanic, we can sort of move on. The ice wand can turn into a bow, which is interesting. So a lot of different ranged options. I don't have much to say about it. Oh wow, we're in chapter 6. I feel like we were at chapter 3 in this. I gotta get myself out of the way for these. These are really nice. The Cataclysm. Awash in a sea of nothingness. London floods and burns. Underwater section. Weren't we kind of at a bluish mock turtle section at the beginning of this game? I feel like we're hitting some repetition, I think. Anyway, I think chapter-wise, we're halfway through. I think I will do a 3-parter, which means I'm going to have to push a little further here. Let's see, how far am I? Page 135. I think it ends around 187, so I've still got a ways to go. We'll see. Alice steps through the doorway into a broken and confused cityscape. The streets of East London snake out before her in large chunks of floating blocks. A mix of flooded and burning buildings suspended, some upward, some downward, under a black winter sky. Snow and ash fill the air. Water floods the streets in many places, suspended in the air between the empty abyss and between the islands of buildings. This is where the final piece of the puzzle will be revealed in Radcliffe's office, if Alice can find it. We play as Alice navigates the scene, heading towards the direction indicated by her inner compass. Part of me almost kind of wishes that this was more Mario 64, where each of these were kind of not linear, like you could explore one beyond the other, if you so chose. And you could enter these places, kind of like panels or paintings, in that hub area. I think there would be some benefit there. And if there was a way to like collect key items in the same way that you collect stars by performing certain puzzle tasks, you could like non-linearly investigate certain places, and there might even be a Metroidvania aspect to it where you would unlock a tool. You would notice in one world that there would be like a fire and you needed to freeze it. And you couldn't freeze it yet, but once you completed a certain section, you could go back and do that. I typically don't like Metroidvanias, but I feel like in this game, where it's a fragmented world and you're trying to create a cohesive Alice, I think that would be a really fascinating way to explore this game as a way to shake things up a bit. And if you manage to get certain memories or plot points out of order, or in a different order, I wonder if that would affect your interpretation of the game. That being said, I would worry about boss design, because with boss design, if it relies on you having a certain weapon that you don't have, would you be able to complete certain bosses? So I think it would narrow the type of bosses that they would be able to create, because they would have to assume that you could defeat the bosses with a minimal amount of equipment. So it would be a trade-off for sure, and it would be harder, but I think it would give this game a sort of cornerstone approach that I feel like right now it lacks. Navigation between the islands of buildings requires a combination of climbing, jumping, and floating, and running, swimming, and fighting. Some buildings exist in regular gravity, and some in down is up gravity, so jumping up can result in falling down, depending on where Alice jumps from. Reminds me of the indie game Limbo. I'm trying to think of another game that has a similar. I can't think of one. I apologize for all my groaning. I have a pinched nerve in my back. And I told myself I wasn't going to be a hypochondriac and talk about my ailing problems on YouTube. But if you want to know why I'm squirming, that's why. The Carpenter. Interesting. Yeah, the Mock Turtle. Carpenter. The Carpenter story is quite a sadistic one, I think. Glad to see that they're addressing a lot of characters from the original property and the original work. The Carpenter is found on one of the islands frantically repairing a ramshackle dike built of stone and wood. As Alice approaches him, Carpenter hastily initiates the conversation. Carpenter: Alice, we must not let London sink, my dear. Civilization is all that stands between us and the consuming chaos. Build, fix, maintain the order, or we're all doomed. Alice, there hardly seems any point. The entire place is either on fire or beneath the waves, and whatever else still stands is broken beyond belief. Carpenter: exactly, child. Belief is what keeps us going despite the burning fires and the rising tides. Belief that doing something is better than doing nothing. Even when we all fail in the end, better to have died trying than lived idly, I'd say. The Carpenter: speaking of idle, don't just stand there wasting breath. You've got to help me empty the seas before he returns. The requisite valves are in the lower levels of the nearby buildings. Alice: before who returns? Don't you mean she? Carpenter: no, he. She has already been here. I speak of the portent of doom and the scion of chaos, that big blubbery bully, the walrus. Your other half has already consumed him. His hunger always was insatiable, but now it's something else. Go now, we don't have any time to waste. The game does do a good job of foreshadowing future enemies. Where can I put my head? Down here, I suppose. We play as Alice jump floats from building to building, finally arriving at the home for wayward children. The building sits upon its own floating island with the wrecked remains of the nearby neighborhood dangling and floating in the surrounding air. The lower levels of the building are flooded while the upper level is on fire. Ghostly visages of children continue to sing, dance, and play inside the area, oblivious to the chaos around them. The building design forces Alice to enter through a sub-basement area and fight her way up. This area is flooded, and the pools of water contain spectral hands that reach out to drown Alice at every turn. That'd be terrifying. Reminds me of the Spirit Temple, or the Shadow Temple in The Legend of Zelda. I'm trying to remember which one. Ocarina of Time, of course. Here she finds the valve and turns it, causing the water to drain away. This blocks her ability to exit via the way she came, so she continues upward. Into the main floors of the building, Alice passes orphans, caretakers, and adults in scenes from the past, attempted adoptions, children playing games. The second floor of the building leading to Bumby's office is on fire. Alice navigates and fights her way through this to arrive at the door of Bumby's office. Entering Bumby's office triggers a flashback. Wow, a lot of art. I'm just going to move myself out of the way. We're in the slumber again. Learn about the monsters creating monsters. Locate Bumby's journal. We play as a ghost of adult Alice climbs through the window and tiptoes to Bumby's desk. Adult Alice finds a journal and skims through it. The journal is the same that the monstrous Bumby apparition carried in Alice's previous encounters with him. A simple, elegant book. It is made of pale leather that resembles fine skin. I'll bring myself back. It reveals Bumby's childhood past, a brutal existence under a controlling and vindictive father. We jump to a series of flashback scenes. Bumby's father beating his wife. Child Bumby frantically cleaning the bloody floors. Rooms filled with dead animals and the tools of a taxidermist. Goodness. That would be something. It's empathy. It provides an explanation, but not an excuse for the existence of Bumby's evil. The scene ends with Alice face-to-face with a pile of dolls. Emerging from the pile, the doll maker reaches forward to grab her. Alice recoils and is suddenly back in London, plummeting from the night sky. I do like the attention paid to understanding how a generation is only as strong as the psychological health of love and attention and patience and empathy that they're able to provide. And I suppose one of the things that we learn about history is that over time, there is something to be said about our progress for understanding psychological health compared to previous generations. Like, all it takes is a cursory look at our grandparents or our parents to see the gains that have been made in the way that we speak to our lovers and friends and family, to see that we have made not unilaterally, but piecemeal, major strides. I know, for example, that the way that I communicate with my wife and the way that we relate to children, students, is so far afield in a different plane than previous generations. And I think that if one wants to have a feeling of hope in the future, it is in that. It is in the ability to see what it takes to be patient and empathetic. And that just requires like psychological training, and it requires like leading by example. And I think as a whole, people have gotten better. I have to believe that. That doesn't mean that it will always be that way, that it's assured. It's very precarious. So it's up to us really to ensure that we provide that. So it's very explicit. It takes work and psychological commitment. And I think that is a theme that this game is trying to do, is talking about what it takes for psychological healing. And because of that, I'm a really big fan of the message of the game. I feel like a lot of video games sort of deny or substitute what could be psychological growth into like just repetition compulsion, killing, dying, repeat, leveling up. So I hope I make sense. I think there is a case to be made thematically and morally and ethically about this game. Moving on, we're still trying to find Radcliffe's office. We play as Alice floats down to the rooftops of London. She continues to follow her inner compass to the next valve. We play as Alice jump floats from building to building, finally arriving at Radcliffe's office. The building sits upon its own floating island, with the wrecked remains of the nearby neighborhood dangling and floating in the surrounding air. The lower levels of the building are flooded, while the upper level is on fire. Not a good day for London. The building has a special cloud of chaos creatures around it, an additional layer of protection that indicates something special inside. Alice jump floats to the roof of the building and fights her way down. On the second floor, we again face the door and see it open to a room full of bookshelves, paintings, and statues. Tick-tock. Entering the room triggers another series of flashbacks. Really pretty. I'm not a fan of the tentacles. Like, I think tentacles are weird. So, it's a choice. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. The previous memory of Alice entering Radcliffe's office plays out, only this time Alice does not have a memory apparition of herself to follow. She's alone. As the grandfather clock ticks, Alice approaches the desk. She calmly reaches out her hand and takes hold of the wicked dark mass swirling in front of her. It's a key item. It's a black book. As before, a monstrous, shapeless beast of chaos begins to take shape, engulfing the room before Alice. Ella does not react or flinch. With her heart, eyes, and brain focused, she is in control. Opening the palm of her hand and focusing on the shapeless chaos, its form dissipates, shrinks, then retracts entirely. All that remains clasped in her hand is a small, leather-bound black book. Important plot points. Okay, this is interesting. I haven't really encountered a page Well, no, that's not true. We got some stuff with the Mad Hatter about important plot points. I guess that implies that they had some stuff that they wanted to put into the game, but they couldn't find a form or a framework for it. Alice opens the pages to find bills of sale, pages and pages of sad photos of children with their names, monetary sale worth, defining features in the names of the buyers. Each child is numbered and listed like livestock. Oh. Oh, okay. So we're getting into like human and sex trafficking. So that could be triggering. I wonder if the Madness Returns discussed that. I'm trying to remember. I have to imagine that in the 19th, 18th, early 20th century, of course it's happening today, but I do wonder if there was a sort of pipeline between asylums and orphanages for young people being sold in this way. We play as a grim game of hide and seek occurs. Following their cries, the dolls will guide Alice to their location when she opens the cupboard. They hide within or look under the bed they cower beneath. Alice will meet the gaze of familiar children from the home for wayward children. When she finds them, they scream out and fade to dust. They are all terrified or crying. Each time Alice finds a child, she becomes more and more agitated and panicked. Alice, no, please, I want to help you. When Alice locates the last child, which turns to ash, all is silent. No more cries, only deathly silence. A cutscene plays. The shadow will appear. She is sitting by a windowsill, staring out into the void of night. And here I will move myself back to this other side. As Alice approaches the shadow, there's a sense of calm. Sorrow hangs heavy in the air, and neither draws their weapon. The shadow continues to stare at the stars as she speaks. Shadow, you see why I do what I must. The truth is not just in our suffering, but also theirs. These monsters, Radcliffe and Bumby, have sold off these innocent lives like livestock. They must be punished. That pig will pay with his life. Alice, if you kill Radcliffe, there will be nothing left in you. We will suffer his fate. You are so far gone. Bumby is already dead, and look at you. You walk his same path. He still infects you. The shadow roars, no, I will end his path. These men murdered our family, killed our sister, burned them alive. They stole everything from us. The shadow is enraged. The memory scene around her pulsates and cracks as she screams. And you willingly stand in my way. There is nothing left to save. It's all gone. Alice, we are here. We might be worth saving. We're still a part of our family. You are worth saving. Don't do this. There has to be another way. Shadow, no, I will do what must be done, as I always have. The shadow. Radcliffe dies. The scene ends in a swirling vortex, and Alice is pulled back to the cataclysm. Pulled back to the cataclysm? I don't remember. I guess this is where we saw the carpenter. Staring into the abyss, it stares back. So it looks like we have a boss fight with the carpenter and the walrus. We play as Alice returns to the carpenter to report her success in turning off the valves. But it's too late. Chaos overflows. The walrus and the carpenter are there, both consumed by chaos and made into giants. They dwarf Alice in size. Oh, this is an Ornstein and Smo fight. For sure. Walrus is Smo and... Wait. Yeah, and the carpenter is Ornstein. What follows is an epic boss battle across the cataclysm in which Alice must defeat the crafty duo while hopping between the flooded, burning ruins of East London. As the buildings are destroyed, nothing left for anyone to stand on, and the walrus and carpenter are left drifting in empty space. Alice watches their bodies float into the void. Reaching out to Carpenter, she knows she has lost another friend. She mourns. Cool. There's some great concept art still. This one has a real sense of depth, great lighting. That rabbit looks so good. The texture and materials of it. It looks very lifelike. It's like, it feels like you can reach out and touch it. Hatter's Workshop. Bargaining Realm. The time is up. Interesting. They say that one of the weaknesses of the 5 stages of grief is in people assuming that they are from beginning to end. And they proceed linearly, which is not true. I have heard that in the 5 stages of grief, you move back and forth, from denial to anger, back to anger, or straight to mourning. You have some degree of acceptance, but then you can regress back into bargaining. Like, all the different permutations, I'm sure, exist in some way. Alice steps from the Hall of Doors and quickly returns to Hatter's workshop. Alice now knows the secrets of the darkness and what has created it. The Hatter is in a distant state of mind. He explains only one moon remains. Tick-tock. This does feel like a climactic moment in the game. You seem to have all the information, all the truth. I didn't like the alchemist dress before, but I really like it here in this concept art. So I'm not quite sure what I was missing. The chaos clock in Hatter's workshop is nearly completely consumed by the shadow. Everywhere Alice looks in his workshop, darkness is seeping in. Through windowsills, under doorways, all other entrances and exits from the Hatter's workshop are blocked. Alice has everything she needs. All that is left to do is complete Alice's quest and assemble the fragments she has collected and find her way home. Whoa! Things seem like they're wrapping up. Hatter reveals a sarcophagus emblazoned with winged beasts. A mighty griffin is carved on its hull. A final puzzle to solve. Hatter and Alice lay the pieces she has collected into a stone slab with numerous apparatus and machinations. Eyes, brain, inner compass, and tears all slot into place. In the end, the puzzle cannot be completed. After all other puzzles are solved, a secret panel presents itself. A single heart-shaped slot remains empty. The final slot of the puzzle is the clockwork heart, and it's still beating within the rabbit. A cutscene plays. Alice, no, don't. Hatter stays his hand. His voice is stern but steady. The Hatter, this might be a difficult choice, Alice, but this piece is required. If we do not have the heart in the right place, what we create to get you home will be without one. I cannot guarantee your success, your safety, or what comes next without it in place. Tick-tock, chaos is barely restrained at every crevice of Hatter's laboratory. It is overflowing. Hatter continues. The Hatter, we are out of time. Alice looks down to her rabbit and to the machines and to Hatter. Her eyes land on her tiny friend. Hatter awaits Alice's choice as she turns to address the scientist. I'm sorry I read that so bizarrely. Alice, my heart is exactly where it needs to be, with or without one in place in the machine. I know we'll face whatever comes next together. Hatter smiles. The rabbit hops in a circle around Alice. He hugs her boot. That is adorable. I'll let the maudlin nature of it slide. The Hatter, so be it. Sounds like you indeed have enough heart to spare. Engaging click and a whir as heavy gears churn and spark, initiating the machinery in Hatter's laboratory. The sarcophagus glows. The power sparks surge from white to red, then green. Hatter furiously tries to operate levers and keep the wild sparking power controlled within. The winged griffin effigies on the sarcophagus change and morph to something else, still winged but wicked. Horrible, snarling, beastly noises are heard from within the sarcophagus. Smoke streams from its cracks. The chaos clock chimes. Time is up as chaos seeps in through the walls. Hatter calls out to Alice. The Hatter, bold choice, Alice. I hope you certainly are ready for what you are about to face. Before Alice can react, he holds up his hand. He continues. No time to waste. Good luck, Alice. If you tame and defeat what's to come, you'll find your way home. I'll hopefully see you both again, in another time perhaps. Alice smiles warmly at the scientist. Speaking of time, allow me to buy you some more. Hatter suddenly pulls a lever. A moment before we witness him become consumed in a gurgling mess of black, shapeless tentacles. His scream of anguish is cut short as he is consumed by chaos. A moment passes, then a massive gear is heard turning. It chunks into place. The area of Hatter's lab contains the sarcophagus. Alice and her rabbit shoots up through the open roof as sheet lightning flickers overhead. Heavy rain pours as more lightning snakes across the bracken skies of Wonderland. Chapter ends. That seems like a point of no return moment, because if you can't access the Hatter's workshop, then you're kind of propelling yourself into the end game, right? And pacing-wise, I think that the early game is too long. The mid game is too short. I don't know what's going to happen here with the end game. I suspect it'll feel too long. So I would say that the early game needs to be pulled short to allow you to get to the Hatter's Workshop sooner. I think that the mid-game should be extended far more, probably with some of that early game subsumed into the middle game. And I think that the end game should actually be quite short. I really only think that one chapter should have been the end game, so to allow the plateauing of the middle game. But we don't know what we're about to see, so I think I could be dead wrong, and it could be paced well. That's just my hypothesis as we move on. Pretty great stuff here. We have sort of left the phases of grief. We seem to have, I don't know, we're sort of drifting, right? We don't really have acceptance. We've dealt with, denial, anger, depression, and bargaining. We haven't hit acceptance yet, so we're kind of listlessly wandering. Looks like we might fight the Jabberwock, though, which is a very iconic thing that's in Through the Looking Glass, the book and the movie, the Disney live action film, which I've yet to see. I'm scared of watching it because I heard it has terrible reviews. Some great art as usual. The Wings of Steam. The scene opens. Alice and her rabbit and the sarcophagus are now outside the lab on a giant rooftop platform high above the laboratory. Nestled in the sky on the perilous platform, a scene of decay, ruin, and rot has spread across all of Wonderland. Between flashes of light, it is revealed that Wonderland is now fully consumed by chaos and shadow, as far as the eye can see. We play as Alice approaches the sarcophagus. As she does so, the Jabberwock emerges from Hatter's machination. The Jabberwock's flaming eyes lock onto Alice. His enormous frame engulfs Alice in shadow as he moves forward. Rain steams as it hits his body. Brandishing her blade, Alice is ready for a fight. Her rabbit stands by her side. The Jabberwock snarls and unfurls his massive wings. The Jabberwock. Ask yourself, Alice, what good is a heart? With a reflex as fast as the lightning that cracks around them, the Jabberwock knocks Alice to the ground and snares the rabbit in his claws. The Jabberwock, when it can so easily be broken. Alice can only watch and scream as the Jabberwock ruthlessly tears out the heart of the rabbit. I like this scene. The scene is really, I can visualize it pretty clearly. Quite evocative. The rabbit's tiny soggy body writhes in his claws, and both the heart and the rabbit's body are eaten by the Jabberwock. A lot of voice actors are required for this. This is kind of this feels like a magnum opus game. It was perhaps too big for what it wanted. We should table that until the end. Alice screams in fury and rushes towards the gigantic beast, blade in hand. We have a boss battle against the Jabberwock. I don't think I need to speak too much on this. It looks to be according to them, one of the most intense multi-stage boss battles of the game. It's a wyvern fight. It's a dragon fight, which is kind of cool. Some cool art here. I'll move on. Some even more cool art, which I'll pull away from so you can see it comprehensively. It reminds me of a Returnal fight. So in Returnal, there is a similar fight in the Mars-looking stage, the reddish one. You fight in a kind of circular arena like this against a flying enemy. Before the final stage of the fight, because there's two stages, and it feels very much like this. It's a cool fight. I like it. Part of me wants to go back and replay Returnal because I have a new monitor. Even more art. It's rare in the design Bible that we've gotten this much art. It's clear that this is like, not only is it a big thing in the mythos of Alice in Wonderland, but it seems to be equally weighted here in the game. A cutscene plays at the end of the encounter. Rain now falls gently, his throat bleeding and chaos seeping from his wounds. The Jabberwock stumbles back to his knees. He splutters as he laughs. Distant lightning forks and crackles overhead. The thunder turns to the slow, withering heartbeats of the defeated Jabberwock. Alice stares at the beast furiously. She trembles in rage as shadow falls. Jabberwock, pitiful. Through the fire, your memory and suffering, you still fear me, girl. Alice, fear be damned. Vile beast, you will not stop me from finding my way home. Jabberwock, stop you. Look around you. The darkness in you is already won. There's nothing left to save. Your hope blinds you. Your broken heart weakens you. And your home? Rain falls as the Jabberwock's laughter continues to splutter. Your true home was lost the moment you failed to save your family. Everything else has been and is but a shadow, an illusion, a shade of what could have been. You failed again, girl. You can't even see it. Alice grits her teeth. Your only sanctuary lies in the truth of your own darkness. It calls to you. That is where your journey ends, alone in the heart of darkness. I know it. Alice, I am not only my shadow, I am more, and I will listen no longer to your wicked words. Jabberwock, listen or not, you cannot deny the truth. No matter how hard you still hopelessly kick and flail, you are being dragged to your inevitable doom, Alice. It is only a matter of time before you drown beneath the waves of your own torment. Alice, no, your torment will be paid in full for killing my friend. Lightning rips across the sky. The Jabberwock matches Alice's gaze. Hers is fiercer. Jabberwock, it appears. Darkness has already found a home in you. The Jabberwock's final words are cut short as Alice drives her blade through his skull as the scaled flesh falls and rots. All that is left of the fearsome Jabberwock is his colossal skeleton and Alice's blade wedged in bone. With a final emotionless heave, Alice's blade wrenches free from the skull and the beast's skeletal remains fall to dust and ash. If I had my way, I would have the Jabberwock's dialogue play in reverse to reflect some of the mirrored themes that were in the Looking Glass, and especially the kind of the Jabberwock encounter in the Looking Glass. I think that would have been really cool to have this dialogue play in reverse to give it an eerie twist that wasn't in other parts of the game, to give it its own iconic identity. Alone on the platform, we play as Alice examines the ashen remains of her opponent. Something writhes where the Jabberwock's stomach once was. As a pile of ash blows away in the breeze, the badly damaged body of the rabbit is revealed, sprawled on the ground. Kneeling down beside her dead friend, Alice holds his body and notices the heart is in place within the chest. The rabbit wiggles weakly in her arms and hugs her back. He is alive. Chaos seeps across the edges of the platform, encircling Alice and her rabbit, as the bones of the Jabberwock flit and continue to drift. Alice watches as the tree turns to lazily falling snowflakes. The platform morphs as Alice and Rabbit hold hands. The scene around them shines and warps and bleeds into a brilliant white light. Snow now falls heavily as a disembodied voice utters, "Welcome home, Alice." And then a cool double-page spread of the dead Jabberwock with Alice and the White Rabbit looking over. Very cool. A cool battle dress, I would say. Clearly the shoulder armor is different. So are the gloves, the gauntlets. It's a pretty nice touch. Her hair is pulled back, which I like, into like a loose tail. Very empowering. Despite a powerful exterior, beneath her armored shell beats a fragile heart desecrated by loss. Alice steels her resolve and faces her demons head on. despite if she is ready or not. Some interesting art here of the arena, I think, the Chaos Clock, the Hatter's platform. Final slumber encounter. Okay, so maybe we're closer than we think. Is this, how long is the final chapters then? Perhaps I was not paying attention to how many chapters there actually are. Through a cloudy transition, Alice and her rabbit enter slumber and find themselves in scenes last seen at the start of the game, a snowy British countryside with Alice's family home in the distance. It is a starry night, but there is no moon in the sky this time. Alice, my true home? I've been here many times before. What have I missed? A reprise of the Queen of Hearts, apparently. Level wayfinding design notes emanating ethereal white light. The Liddell home is positioned as a safe haven, pulsating and breaking on the horizon of this dying world, acting as a wayfinder throughout the level. Optical illusions and geometry tricks will reposition the bright light as Alice fights her way forward. We play as Alice runs across the broken floating islands in the slumber realm. Her rabbit accompanies her through an environment that is broken, unstable, and tremors sporadically. Chaos seeps in through every crevice. This world is dangerous and breaking apart. The chaos has followed Alice here. They head towards a rising plume of smoke in the distance. Advanced platforming, spatial timing, and environmental puzzles, as well as high-stakes combat encounters with chaos, are solved in quick succession to progress. We play as Alice makes her way through scenes in the slumber realm towards the goal of meeting with Caterpillar. She arrives at the place where his mushroom sits. It is terrifyingly still and silent. Alice and Rabbit are alone. As Alice approaches, a cutscene begins. A familiar silhouette in the darkness. The figure turns. There's like a sentence run-on problem going on there. Alice has stopped in her tracks. She's face-to-face with the Queen of Hearts. Her grotesque form is exactly the same as the manipulator Alice faced in the throne room. Alice draws her blade as the two exchange heated words. Alice, where is Caterpillar? What have you done with him? Alice demands. The Queen's large eyes narrow on Alice. Her booming words are measured, regal, and dripping with power. Queen, I've been waiting for you, girl. Welcome home indeed. Never on time, always late. Somewhere else to be. Hopelessly lost in your curiosity and imagination. The Queen focuses on the vorpal blade. Until you found that blade. Or did it find you? The wand chooses the wizard, Harry. With it in hand, you've carved quite a path, Alice, led equally by your violence and curiosity. It begs the question, which one truly steers your heart? Enough of your lies, you vile manipulator, Alice responds. I've already driven this blade through your neck once, and I'll do it again. Okay, in typical Dark Souls or Elden Ring format, we fight a repetition of a boss, wasting everyone's time. Actually, I have words up here that I'm going to have to read. We play as Alice fights the Queen of Hearts in a boss battle. This is a reprisal of the first fight. We mentioned that. This encounter plays with your expectations, offering unforeseen twists that require new approaches to best the encounter. Yet even more animating and programming. Cutscene plays after the battle is won. Alice closes in and confronts the defeated Queen of Hearts. Alice, this is all your fault. Queen holds out her hand to signify stop and smiles warmly. Queen, yes, Alice, it is. I've always been harsh, but I've only tried to do what was best for you. Red fleshy tentacles swarm about, the same as what appears whenever Alice has died or failed in game. Queen of Hearts, when you have fallen, I have picked you back up again. The Queen's skin begins to peel away, falling aside, split from the base of her crown. Down her body, her flabby, disgusting skin gracefully sheds like a hollow cocoon. What is happening? What is going on here? A beautiful woman clad in deep red flowing robes emerges. She has the pale face of Alice's mother. Alice has encountered the memory of her dead mother. Oh, I see. You know, we talked about that before with the the bad breast and the good breast, the act of splitting. So the Queen of Hearts and the White Queen, so the Red Queen and the White Queen are split versions, perhaps of the mother, right? And so I think here they're capitalizing on that, not necessarily with the White Queen, but just having inside of the Red Queen, the Good Queen, i.e. the mother, looking regal and beautiful, holding something. Oh, Hatter's head. Oh dear. All right, I'll bring myself back. The scene continues as Alice looks on in shock, her blade pointed, the memory of Alice's mother. Leanne Liddell calmly addresses her daughter. Alice, mother, no, this is another of your tricks, an illusion. This is kind of like a reversal on a lot of games where, or just like the Star Wars story of like, I'm your father. In this case, I'm your mother. Alice, you stole Hatter's mind. You enslaved him to do your bidding. Mother, stole? No, dear girl. I kept it for safekeeping. Take it. You'll have use for it yet. Alice's mother reaches into a metallic statue of Hatter's head. She pulls out a new shining, beautiful clockwork brain. She hands Hatter's mind to Alice. Alice is bewildered by the kindness. A key item. An important plot point. Alice's mother speaks in an elegant, familiar manner, explaining, Mother, this is the last time we will meet here. The most valuable lessons we learn are also the most costly, Alice. This has been the costliest of them all. You embody the parts of yourself that are still entwined with hope. Playful, kind, you are the light in your own darkness, and you are getting brighter. Alice's mother looks warmly at the rabbit and smiles. Mother, and I see your curiosity is also intact. Patting the rabbit on the head, the memory of Alice's mother continues. Mother, years ago, the horrors you faced. When we found you lost and alone, we had no choice. We locked you away to protect you and then to prepare you. Keanu Reeves? The scene continues as Alice's mother gestures with her hand, summoning older memories Alice has seen or experienced in previous slumber encounters. Mother, you were split at your core, Alice. A survival mechanism, severed and left behind. The other part of you continued your fight alone and drew strength from your anger. Okay, wow, so they're addressing the psychological term of splitting rather explicitly. That anger was strong and it carried her forward. She survived and overcame extremely difficult obstacles. Memories of Alice's adventures in Ask Me Anything and Ask Me Really... no, it's American McGee's Alice and Alice the Madness Returns play out. Mother, now her anger and despair have in turn been infected by the very darkness it sought to destroy, a ruin, a plague that has been transferred to your other half by the process of eliminating it. Your shadow, she grows stronger by the moment. Her fury has very nearly consumed every part of you. So this reminds me very much of Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, where Alan Wake is the departure into psychosis, similar to what I'm assuming is the American McGee's Alice. I've never played the first one. And then Alice the Madness Returns would be something like Alan Wake 2, I suppose a little bit. And then this Alice Asylum would be like an Alan Wake 3. Although there is a little bit in Alan Wake 2 of return. And so I guess both of them are doing similar things here between Alice Asylum and Alan Wake 2. Memories of Bumby being pushed in front of the train flash past Alice and her mother. Alice's mother walks towards the memory of Bumby, closely examining the frozen facial expression on Dr. Angus Bumby's face. Moments before he is killed, Leanne curls her lip and bares her teeth in anger at Bumby. She is disgusted by him. She turns back to Alice. Mother, that darkness has destroyed this place. It is almost won. We are on the knife edge of this precipice. Darkness always begets more darkness. Alice's mother waves her hand, and we now see a new memory. It is recent. In London, an adult Alice Liddell has Radcliffe at knife point. He is cornered up against the bookshelves. Alice is threatening to kill him. He begs and pleads for his life, but the Alice in the memory scene is obviously consumed by shadow. Her eyes are swirling, lightless voids. The knife is pointed at his neck. Tick-tock. Mother, this is the culmination of her rage. That darkness manifested without my control or your conscience or kindness. The scales tip directly into the abyss. She needs your help. If she kills again, there will be nothing left to save. You are the light that can guide her through the darkness. You must save her. Alice's mother turns away from the memory, and the scene around them shifts to the interior of Alice's family home. The first scene from the opening of the game, Alice and her mother are sitting at the table wearing their rabbit masks. Lizzie and her father are absent. The black birthday cake is there, candles shining bright. Wax drips, and "Eat Me" tag hangs from the side of the cake. Chaos is now visibly seeping into the scene through the windows of the house. Alice's mother continues to address Alice. Mother, this is where your torment was born, in fire and pain. Grow from that pain, Alice. Sorry, I misread that. Be more than that pain. Our time of protecting you against yourself here has come to an end. A new voice. A man's. The lessons we have taught you will guide your way. Alice, we... And then in walks Keanu Reeves, telling us when Cyberpunk 2077 is going to come out. As Alice turns to watch, the skin of the caterpillar sloughs and falls to the floor. Oh, okay. A beautiful butterfly is turning Keanu Reeves into butterfly version. It's got a cool suit. Memory of Alice's father, Arthur Liddell, emerges and kneels down beside the child as he has done in memories prior. So the guiding force is the father. In the game, that's very interesting. We've taught you everything you need to know, Arthur says. Guided you and kept you as safe as we can. You've had to learn some very difficult lessons and taken a few tumbles. But here you are, the choices you now make will be yours alone, Alice. You will know how to make the right ones. Alice, overwhelmed, embraces the memories of her mother and father. Alice's mother and father, we are proud of you, Alice. The walls of the house are ripped away, the ceiling is torn open, giant tentacles and black chaos swirl everywhere. Alice's mother and father are wrapped in tentacles and lifted into the void. Alice runs to the cake and eats a handful of its thick mass. As a tear falls down the child's cheek, her brow furrows and her gaze turns into a powerful, focused fury. Alice screams as the sky begins to crack around her, triumphant. Alice's size grows and grows as she shatters the layers of her confines. She is growing up, she has learned. Yeah, with a reminder of the love and attachment of her mother and father. I think that would be a solidifying aspect that would return her psyche back to healthy living, out of psychosis. Turning to share her victory, Alice looks back only to see the memory of her mother and father smiling back at her peacefully. They are still and silent. Alice's eyes tremble. We then watch as the shadow cruelly and swiftly consumes the memory of Alice's dead mother and father. Bloody ruined tentacles and body parts are strewn into the abyss. Alice and her rabbit fade into the red light as she screams soundlessly. Ooh. Some great artwork here. So I think that Alice Asylum would be a great, both in its design and in its subject matter, would be a great game for teenagers. I think it is a great game that establishes the formation of a singular identity apart from parents, and it is about, in a way, the symbolic death of the hold that a mother and father have over a child as they become an adult. And I think that would be a very empowering thing. And I think the macabre atmosphere is very much like a Nightmare Before Christmas aesthetic that I think a lot of teenage children growing into young adults would appreciate. Now, would they play this instead of Fortnite? I don't know. How do you convince somebody to play an old school exploration platformer of this kind? I don't know. Okay, chapter 8. I sort of wonder how much further we have to go on. I'm going to stop this recording right here and take a small break just to see how much further we have, because I may power through it and just turn this all into a part 2 video. If we have a lot to go through, then I might break it up into a third part. So We'll see. If this is the end of the video, then you'll know. Okay, until then. Okay, we're actually very close, so I'm just going to power through because I think a lot of what we're going to see next is a lot of beautiful art, but the actual amount of content in the forms of like story and dialogue is actually quite short. So I'm going to power through this quickly, and then after that we can evaluate and wrap up, I think, some of the benefits and weaknesses of the design Bible. So let's get started. This is Umberland. Another Wonderland. The Past is Dead, Alice. The Moonlight Sonata, which I think has been way overplayed, is apparently the song that's being played now. I'm not a fan of Beethoven, if that's who it is. If it's that Moonlight Sonata. Silence and Darkness. Then the haphazard rattles of a precariously balancing porcelain tea set. Mad Hatter watches as a snow globe with an ornately carved mock turtle base shakes itself from his table and crashes to the floor. Alice emerges quickly from within the shattered glass, clutching her white rabbit. Her eyes are closed like she is sleeping. Tears are salted dry on her cheeks. As Alice wakes, a beautiful sprouting of plants and flowers spring to life around her, forming a wonderful garden. The Mad Hatter. Oh, there you are, finally. I've been expecting you to. Tea. His familiar jittery voice awakens Alice. The Mad Hatter shoves a filthy, overflowing cup of tea into the child's face. He's no longer his calm, measured self. This Hatter is indeed quite mad. Alice and her rabbit find themselves on the floor in Hatter's workshop, but it is grimier and filthier. Where there was once pristine equipment, now sit jagged edges, rusted springs, and derelict machinery. Chaos is seeping into this workshop everywhere. Shards of the shattered snow globe are strewn about on the floor beside Alice. Endless vortexes swirl in the air through the windows outside. Darkness reigns. Examining the tiny broken snow globe on the floor, Alice then wipes her tears and addresses Hatter. Alice, Hatter, what are you doing here? I saw you. The Mad Hatter. Die? Be consumed? Yes, remarkable. Hatter yells excitedly. Alice places a hand on Hatter's forehead. He is clearly mad, and not his calm self. He jitters as his facial expression tightens into a grimace of pain. Alice reaches into her pockets and produces Hatter's mind, given to her by her mother. Hatter takes the mind, assesses it, then allows Alice to help him as they place it in an open cavity in his skull. His expression and demeanor change as he calms. Where do I go with my head? Because I'm covering all the beautiful art. As this version of the Hatter regains his sanity with help from Alice, the two converse. Alice, let me help you. The Hatter. Alice, yes, thank you. That was me. It was me, in your Wonderland. Quite a sad chap, really. He did die, but he didn't quite take to the idea of being a fragment within a fragment. A bit more sad than mad, I deduce. But he served his purpose gladly, and now here you are, to serve yours. Alice, what purpose, Hatter? The Hatter, this Wonderland is now yours too, Alice. The other parts of you have already made it a world fully consumed by darkness. Your own darkness rules here as it now does everywhere. Hatter looks at the vortexes outside with an indignant huff. The Hatter, the plan was mine long ago. Wonderlands within Wonderlands, something as simple as a snow globe was the stage. Thank your ingenuity, Alice. I saved you. I found the best in you that was left behind. I built the glass walls that kept you safe. The only you that can possibly defeat this horrible new you. And that you has become rather a bit of a problem. For you see, Hatter's words are cut short as he begins to shudder. A dark blade protrudes from his pierced gut. The Hatter, well, that's a pity. Hatter utters as he collapses. His body falls into a bubbling pool of shadow, and he is consumed. The shadow now stands in front of her child self. She speaks, words dripping with spite. Oh man, the mean girl you can't live without. Alice, what are you doing? They all meant no harm. The shadow, but I meant them all harm, just as I intend to harm others. Destruction serves. I need nothing to stand in my way, and you are all that is left. 3. Alice, I do not want to fight you for the shadow, but you will, and you must. The shadow walks around Alice, encircling her prey. The shadow. Choose what I want. It's what we want. Radcliffe deserves to die. This childish wonderland and our false escape from our reality. It no longer serves us. It deserves to die. Alice, no, if they die, so do we. I won't let you burn our darkness onto others. We can be more. There has to be another way. The shadow laughs as she swipes at Alice with a clawed hand. The attack is met with a parry from Alice's vorpal blade. The shadow, in very edgy writing, there is no other way. Your choice is to join me in darkness or die in it. And you fight the shadow. A long time coming. Your own doppelganger. A duel. We won't be talking about this, as we haven't been talking about the other bosses. So I guess while we can see a lot of this art, we can start to talk about some of the implications of this story. So when I was reading the Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual, which is a sort of companion piece to the DSM and focuses more on psychological history and a kind of more robust vertical assessment of where symptoms and tics come from rather than just as something to be medicated, I learned that in sadism, one of the organizing positions that a person can inhabit, there is a very key line which really shook me, where sadists, there has been no empirical evidence that psychiatry or psychotherapy can recover a sadist or can bring a sadist back from their position into healthy or even neurotic positioning. You cannot shift that person. So there is, even in the psychoanalytic literature, from what I can gather, there is a point of no return, that there are some people who are beyond help, at least as far as we know now. And that's a quite shocking conclusion to find buried in this literature, that there is a point where people who enjoy causing pain in others and enjoy causing suffering in others, those people do exist, and that we don't have methods for recovering those people, that they can be lost. And that certainly strikes at the heart of a lot of our ideas of crime and punishment, of rehabilitation, on the right or the left. And so I think it's something to keep in mind here. Now, is this fight between Alice and the shadow a question of sadism? I doubt that. I think it has more to do with Alice breaking so far apart that she will have no redeeming qualities of her own, and it won't be an outward display of sadism. Instead, it will be an inward diatribe of depression that would be endlessly spiraling. And I think that is the story here, is that Alice would be unable to live with herself, that she would be, she would view herself in relation to the people that she's killed, as a victim, but also as a suspect, a perpetrator, an actor of violence. Moving on. As the fight ends with a scream of rage, Alice swiftly and brutally runs the shadow through with her vorpal blade. A cutscene plays. The shadow appears to be dead, impaled on Alice's blade. As black ruin drips from the shadow's mouth, her limp body slumps forward onto Alice. Alice's gritted teeth in fury quickly turn to shock. Alice is panicked. Alice, no, this isn't what I wanted. The shadow, don't you see? There's still darkness in you. I am not a part of you. You are a part of me. And you can't let her go. No more than I can. You're still just as guilty for her death. She binds you to me. That's something that we talked about earlier, about the reversal, the idea that we're playing the imprisoned psyche, and that the shadow is the one who has some dominance in reality. The shadow's darkness seeps forth from the pierced wound and begins to consume Alice. The shadow absorbs Alice. Her clawed hands close tight around Alice's body. As thick ruin engulfs Alice in a flash of darkness, the shadow opens her arms to reveal Alice is gone. She has been taken into the shadow self and consumed. And now we two are one. You are me and I am you. Really haunting imagery here. Oh, cool. So you get to play as Shadow Alice, which is a bit of a nice touch. That you get some opportunities to play vicariously, cathartically as the Shadow Alice. So it would be really empowering, if only for a short while. Suffocated area, kill them all is the objective. So, yeah, they know what they're doing. Opening into a wonderland corrupted by darkness and shadow, we witness as Alice's new form coalesces into being. Alice's vorpal blade bleeds and morphs into a massive, ruinous umbral scythe, as if the edginess were not enough. A new weapon of terrible power is a devastating room-clearing, offensive tool overflowing with darkness. What follows is an introductory sequence that trains Alice in its use. Reminds me very much of in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. When you collect all the masks, you can play as... Is it just called Dark Link? And your form is so overpowering that it's basically like a key to the game that is really cool. I wish more games would do that, where if you can prove to have mastered the game, then you get something that effectively breaks it. I think all single player games should include something like this, just as a way to show mastery. Some great art. The Umbral Scythe I won't be talking about. The combat arena where you get to hunt everybody I won't be talking about, but we can talk about like or we can look at the great imagery here. It's sort of a, it looks like it's a return to all the things that we've seen before, just done in a very manic sort of way. Alice's murder spree continues. With each kill, black holes of swirling voids will manifest. She can travel quickly between scenes of Wonderland through these portals. Objectives are only met in progress granted by the deaths of anyone left in Wonderland. Okay, so it's almost like the edifice of the game that the player's seeing is also crumbling, which I think is a nice touch. I'm trying to think of other games that do that. It's almost like when in a Metal Gear Solid Sons of Liberty, I think, when he tells you to turn your PlayStation off. When you're playing as a Raiden, we need you to turn your PlayStation off. My God, some great artwork here. We play until Shadow Alice achieves her goal. No one remains except the rabbit. After Shadow Alice locates the rabbit, the last objective of final cutscene plays. Shadow Alice and the rabbit are alone on a floating island. In an abyss of darkness, there's nothing left of Wonderland or its inhabitants. She walks towards the rabbit. The massive scythe reforms to a blade in her hand. The rabbit trembles soundlessly. He has nowhere to run. Shadow Alice. I'm getting White Swan and Black Swan vibes. All these memories are a constant knife through my mind, each rippling across an ocean of grief, waves from distant shores, crashing relentlessly, driving me mad. So many questions, even after they are answered, they still bring pain. Why? At last, pure silence. No more memories, no more faces, no more obstacles to overcome, no more questions, no more curiosity, and no more of the relentless imagining, no more relentless pain. Time is up. You told me before. We must not be late. A brief look of shock on the rabbit's face as the player enacts the command input for the shadow to pierce him slowly with her vorpal blade. Press X to kill. Her eyes close and the light within the scene fade to complete darkness. The last thing we see is the rabbit's tiny, lifeless body torn into shreds. His heart falls from his body and is cleaved by the shadow's blade. It shatters into a mist. As the shards glimmer into the darkness, nothing is left but the empty, pitch-black abyss. Silence. Chapter summary. A full 60 seconds of darkness follows. What? There are a few brief flickers of dim light and dust on screen, so players do not think the game has crashed or completely ended. What a choice. As the dust and blood falls into the dreamlike shards, it slows, then freezes in time. We wait. Chapter end. Wow. controversial choice. This is the Shadow Alice. With Alice Liddell's shadow fully in control, her unbridled havoc and rage is unleashed on her own mind, attacking everything that makes her who she is. The shadow will not stop until all is consumed by the darkness within. We get some summaries. You can throw the scythe like a boomerang, it looks like. Moving right along. Inside the heart of the shadow, a moment frozen in time, extinguished light. Yeah, we don't have 12 chapters, by the way. I don't know where I got that idea. Maybe I did get it from the beginning, but we actually have something like 10. And I don't know how that happened. Maybe I did see it and they just cut it short. They ran out of time or ran out of money, you know, before they pitched it. Emerging from the shadows, Alice's inner child steps through infinite darkness. All is silent and still. Frozen in time, nothing is moving except for herself. Beneath her feet, shallow black liquid echoes as she walks. We play as Alice walks alone with her footsteps, unable to run. The scene plays as an interactive cutscene. Alice's footsteps echo, reverberating coldly as she wanders along a void of nothingness. As she walks, she emanates her own dim, gentle light. It casts just ahead of her, illuminating the silhouettes of these still figures in the darkness. As she nears them, Alice wanders past her slain friends and family. Cheshire Cat, her mother, her father, Mock Turtle Carpenter, they are dark marble cast statues, frozen at the moment of their death. Their expressions are all tortured. Alice shudders and stares at the morbid statues bleakly, looking at their deaths frozen in time. She finally gazes at her shadow self, immortalized in a fit of rage, tearing the rabbit in half. Blood still drips from her friend's wounds. Jesus. Her macabre gallery of loss on full display in all its horror. In front of the statue, the inner child begins to cry. Pitch black tears fall from her eyes. Alice, why did she win? Why am I still holding on to? What am I still holding on to? What allowed her to consume me? Alice bows her head and sobs gently, defeated and confused, a voice gentle and familiar from behind her. You are still holding on to me, Alice. You need to let me go. Alice turns to face the voice. At first, Alice only sees a large, broken pocket watch, its glass askew and shattered. As Alice's light illuminates the scene, Lizzie steps into view. Her sister. The memory of Alice's sister, Elizabeth. Get myself out of the way here so you can see it. Elizabeth, you still blame yourself for my death. Your guilt, that is the bridge that the darkness can still cross to your heart. But you still have it locked tight. Lizzie points to her sister's chest. Elizabeth, a heart of darkness suits you ill sister. Alice, you're dead. I avenged your death, but still I can't let you go. Every time I think of you, he corrupts my memories. I cannot shake them. As Alice grits her teeth in anger, her eyes turn as the dark as the shadows around her. Bimby's laugh is heard as a whisper in the darkness. Something stirs in the shadows. Lizzie moves forward and holds on to Alice. Elizabeth, Alice, I am more than my death. I am more than him. I am your sister, and I will always be your sister, and I love you. As she does so, a monstrous apparition of Bumby, twisted and corrupt and misshapen, squelches from the shadows. It laughs, horribly reaching for Lizzie and Alice. Alice shudders. She wails as she holds onto her sister. I can't. Your death is my fault. Elizabeth, no, the people we love are never truly gone. Life is not an end result, Alice. It is a journey, and I am so thankful to have walked it with you. Alice listens to her sister intently. Alice's lips tremble. Elizabeth, let me go. It's not your fault. It never was. It was his. Only his. Elizabeth, remember this, Alice. If you ever want to visit me, our time together is always in your memory. I'm always there, where we dance and sing and play together, and with that bloody cat, Dinah, such a peculiar thing. Bumby the doll maker, you're both men? Oh, you're both mine. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's protracted. It's stretched. Another boss battle. This time it is guilt manifest. So there's a lot of different faces. Pretty cool. Elizabeth, you have to settle this guilt within you once and for all, and I'm right here with you. You know what to do, little sister. So the threat level is deadly, but not difficult, I think. It's kind of a epilogue boss. It's got 2 phases. That's modern. Zooming into Alice's eyes, it turns into a pool of darkness with just a flicker of light within them. A single tear slides down Alice's cheek. It morphs and flashes into a brilliant light. Chapter end. The moon dress. Lost in shadow and mourning her defeat, a glimmer of hope still remains in the darkness. Curiosity explores the dark. Alice is lost, but has not given up. In consuming her inner child, the shadow has unknowingly allowed hope to enter the heart of darkness. I'm assuming that New Game Plus would be allowed. I think that was mentioned in the gameplay mechanics of the part, but I don't remember. Yeah, let's get myself out of the way. There's some really great artistry going on here. An homage to yin and yang, I think. The sense of balance and cohesiveness between the two, right? We've got this like curling white and black, but the way that they curl, they kind of inhabit each other's field. Salve et coagula. Dissolve to reform. I'll just be down here. Dialogue be damned. Zooming out, we witness the face of the shadow unfreezing in time. Her look is puzzled. She is all alone in the darkness. Alice's voice is heard. It is her normal voice. The one of the repressed inner child. Alice. Well, this is rather pointless. Despite all our collective anger and internal bloodshed, I'm still here, and we're both still here. There's no point in pretending that we're not. Your destruction of the old has led to the construction of something new. Faint flicker of light in the darkness. It resolves into the flapping wings of a brilliant blue butterfly, and then another and another until butterflies fill our view. Alice, we've been so focused on guilt, but guilt can die. You cannot kill curiosity. It's that part of your brain that seeks to understand which drove you to explore. And in exploring, you discovered pain, but also found truth. And that truth won't set you free, but it will at least allow you to stop looking in that direction. Butterfly wings flap and twist, revealing behind them a growing mass of flowers, leaves, and trees. Alice, point is, nothing is going to make it better. Those horrible memories did happen, but you don't have to keep staring at them. The trees resolve into a great forest, and we're suddenly flying over Wonderland with a swirling mass of butterflies. Alice, turn your curiosity to other things. You've spent enough time inside your own head. It's time to get out of that maze. Time is what we have now. Is what we now have. We have time to explore other lands. Our view focuses on a ledge within the Vale of Tears where Shadow Alice stands next to Child Alice. They are at peace as they gaze out on a fresh, new Wonderland. Actually, my face is in a good spot. The scene pans, and Shadow Alice and the inner child, Alice Liddell, are each sitting at a quaint table. Both halves of Alice are sharing a tea party as the scene continues. Alice continues to speak to her other half. Alice, look at what a fantastic journey has sprung forth from all that pain and suffering. All that pain, the adventure, the obstacles, and the achievements. It was all really very much. Not for nothing. We've grown and we've learned. We should be excited to see what comes next. We're ready for it, as ready as we'll ever be. Shadow Alice. What if it's only more darkness that awaits us? Alice, then we'll face that too together. We're no strangers to it. Inner child Alice smiles at her older self as she says, Alice, you are me and I am you, and now we two are one. They both smile. The plush rabbit is overjoyed and throws himself between the two Alices, not really too sure who to celebrate with or embrace most. As Wonderland resumes its beautiful, lush, and lightened state, Umberland is no more. The beautiful world around them breathes and glows. Both Alices stand up and look towards a scene of the memory Alice glimpsed from her mother. A ghostly vision of Radcliffe's face is in the sky. Through the clouds it plays. His expression is puzzled, still at knife point. Shadow Alice. There really is a darkness in me, and out there. It's everywhere. Alice. Yes, always. That's the truth of it. But it's what we choose to do when we experience that darkness that makes the best of us. 3, do we persist, overcome, and learn, and help those who suffer, or do we choose to inflict and pass that same darkness on to others? Alice. Let's find out. Both Alice's link hands and a brilliant white light obscures their silhouettes as the child, Shadow, and Shadow share a calm moment of pause together. The sunlight shines on Alice Liddell's face. Shadows from the trees also basks them. And as light from sky and shadow merge on the two halves, the camera pans around the tea party in a brief trick of optical illusion. There's now only one Alice Liddell. She finishes her tea. The camera zooms into the green eyes of Alice in Wonderland and zooms out to reality. And some heterochromia, the eyes of different colors, is there. A new weapon called the Astral Gateway. I don't know. It's a secret bonus weapon if they manage to collect all the pieces of the dress runes described in the earlier section of the Design Bible. Interesting. Cool, I guess. Okay, so I guess all of this was played out in a singular moment when we're confronting Radcliffe. So there's still that left to do. Confrontation. London, Radcliffe's home day. We play as an adult Alice Liddell confronts Radcliffe after a short gameplay sequence hunting him through the halls of his estate. He stumbles back and flails around the room like a stuck pig. He's sweating profusely, untidy, and bumbling incoherent nonsense. As Alice follows him, she calls him out on all his nefarious doings towards her. As Alice Liddell points her vorpal blade accusingly at him in one hand, he gulps disgustingly. From her other hand, she produces a bound little black book. She then slams the point of the vorpal blade down into the book on a desk in front of her, and piercing the document and unravels the thread tying them together, showing all of Radcliffe's evil plotting, receipts, photographs, and proofs in his and Bumby's crimes. Yeah, maybe don't stab that. I think you would kind of need that. You'll pay for what you've done, you bastard. With that, Alice stands back, gathers her blade, and crosses her arms. The proof she has gathered is irrefutable. For a man undone, Alice notices his nerves have calmed considerably. Radcliffe, close the door, Angela, or I'll hurt the rodent again. The door slams shut behind them. A lock is heard sliding into place. A sad little girl, Angela, has entered the room and locked the door. Radcliffe begins to laugh as he slams Alice's toy rabbit down on the desk in front of him. Alice is betrayed and alone again. She does not flinch. A long scene. Radcliffe's got a gun. Alice, Radcliffe, and Angela become involved in a heated and bitter confrontation. Who is Angela? Alice, I see you found my rabbit. Radcliffe, your old toys prove more useful in controlling others than it ever did with you. Angela, please don't hurt him. Radcliffe, shut your mouth, Angela. Radcliffe, stupid brat, can't you see we have company? Radcliffe, don't you see, Alice? I'm not the villain here. Please see the reason. Angus committed the heinous acts that saw your family slain. His vices were terrible. A monster, he is dead. Rightfully so, and I could turn a blind eye. Radcliffe, through my coercion and conversations with him, I saved you from him. Don't you see? I never shared his predispositions of the flesh. I am a businessman, plain and simple. There was demand, we fed the supply, but you were my ward, Alice. I protected you from that fate, and I merely took care of your affairs, kept a roof over your head, and held your family's estate until you're old enough to handle it yourself. Alice, and am I old enough now? Am I experienced enough to be rid of you? Radcliffe, oh come, Alice, hush. Radcliffe, we both know you are insane, unfit to handle with such a responsibility. You have such an affinity for violence, which must be dealt with first. Radcliffe, tisk tisk, your foresight is poorly limited, girl, as is your caliber and class. You choose violence, I choose strategy. You've neglected my contingency plans, Miss Liddell. The promise of your family's money has already secured my place in this society. The gains from our little business venture you've uncovered is beyond lucrative. Supply and demand, it flows deep. Radcliffe, and through that, the services of the law are already bought, sealed, and paid for. You've far overestimated your own place and power here. Your pathetic truth has no value. He draws a small firearm from his coat pocket. Radcliffe, I had hoped you'd eventually succumb to your madness and fade away like the ashes of your forgotten family. Angus and I were so close to being rid of you. But it appears I I've needed to take a more direct approach to your incessant meddling. The shadows of the room dim. Alice holds her ground, blade in hand. Her eyes are sharp and still as Radcliffe aims his weapon. He smiles like a devil. Radcliffe, any last words, girl? Alice's corrupt ward snickers. He savors his power. She gently answers, Alice, you've all looked at what's in my mind for so long. Alice's head tilts as she locks eyes with her tormentor. He is frozen in place. Alice, I wonder what's in yours. A dark pulse emanates from Alice as the shadows knock Angela and Radcliffe to the ground. With an ethereal shudder, Alice's control of her darkness propels her in an instant face-to-face with Radcliffe across the room. Her focused eyes meet his terrified ones. He looks to see the gun in his hand is turned to his distinctly less deadly blue butterfly. It lazily flits away as he trembles in a world of shadow. With Alice's blade pointed at him, running along his chin, she playfully begins. Alice, I've mastered my demons. Even had tea with some of them quite recently. He has no words for the horror and power he is facing. Alice continues. How are your demons, Radcliffe? He gulps in reply. Alice, we should visit them. Alice presses a finger to his sweating, fleshy temple. Together. The final level. Judge, jury, and executioner. Well, maybe the first two, if we're not going to be killing him. Blind Justice is a new enemy. Maybe there are 12 chapters. The walls of the room blow apart as Radcliffe and Alice tumble into a spiraling vortex. Alice floats with elegance, the elegance of a ballerina. Radcliffe is crying and screaming out, a tumbling, blubbering mess. Memories of vile deeds he has committed fly past and into his eyes. Horrible manifestations of insatiable greed, envy, and wrath swiftly devour, bite, and chew at his body as he falls. Spiraling and tumbling into the void, the man cannot fathom or process his own darkness. We play as Alice runs through Radcliffe's other land. She battles past hordes of his inner demons towards the seat of his consciousness. The world is a place of books and ledgers. Words and documents flutter through the sky overhead. The mind of a man whose internal world is propped up by twisted logic and smugness, the smugness of an expert in legal warfare. A lot of great pictures. Little Prince vibes I'm getting from this. Just in the way that, like, each person is a partial object, that is representative of a bad way to live. So allegorical, I would say. Very good for younger readers. Boss battle. Mask of Greed. Interesting artwork. All cool stuff. Back in the asylum. Policeman number 3. So not the first or second, but a third one. Falling back into reality, Radcliffe and Alice are now back in his office. Alice deftly lands on her feet. A few butterflies flicker past. Radcliffe thuds to the floor on his hands and knees as his glasses fall and clutter to the ground. Alice crushes them beneath her boot. Radcliffe writhes and his eyes dart from side to side. His spit bubbles as he whispers frantically to himself through clenched teeth. Alice assesses her former ward. Alice, my diagnosis, nothing but darkness and evil resides in you. At your core and through everything you touch, there is no light, only darkness and suffering of others as a result of your influence. No balance. Policeman number 3. Alice, we've looked into that book. It matches up. We've found some of them. Bumpy, Radcliffe, these bloody fiends were selling those kids. They stop and witness a scene of madness before them. Radcliffe's own darkness has completely taken over him. The officers are speechless. Alice looks at a disgraced and defeated Radcliffe. Alice, you are truly a broken man. I think you've got some work to do on yourself, if you're ever going to be more than that. Dazed and bloodied, and after his full display of attempted murder of Alice and of the officers around him, Radcliffe is quickly restrained, beaten, and carried away. Radcliffe still spouts nonsense through his broken teeth as he goes. The officers are heard saying, Policeman number 4, monster, I think, sometime. And Rutledge's will do this one well. Radcliffe screams. So a reenacting of this symbolic order with the police and the law taking over instead of Alice performing the deed is a good sign of psychological health, right? Of deferring to the law. Satisfied, Alice retrieves the little black book she has collected and leaves the room after the remaining policemen have removed Radcliffe from the premises. Alice walks down the halls and notices a photograph of Radcliffe standing behind her. Her corrupt ward is now finally gone. Alice is free. Next to it, Radcliffe is standing in another newer photo with another young girl. Angela is embossed on the ornate frame. Policeman number 3. Another of Radcliffe's wards. She's got no place to go now. Alice. Where would you like to go, Angela? The child remains silent and instead squirms and squeezes her rabbit tightly. Alice. Maybe you should ask him. He might know where to go. Angela then looks up and replies to Alice. Angela, he thinks we should follow you now. Alice gently clasps Angela's hand. The scene ends. Interesting. Alice gives the rabbit. She no longer needs it, right? So it's a sign of growth. Alice gently clasps Angela's hand. The scene ends. Alice Asylum logo appears on screen and the credits roll. The asylum dress. Follow the familiar and hummed tune. We have some concept art here that leads us home. 13. Angela seems like the stereotypical look of, what we perceive as Alice, despite the fact that Alice Liddell was older. After the credits roll, a secret ending scene plays out. English countryside home, green, lush, gorgeous, and bright. Alice Liddell is smartly tailored and elegantly styled, dressed up in a deep, rich blue attire. Alice walks through the gates of the beautiful estate. She passes by a gorgeous, brand new bronze plaque. Bronze plaque. Yikes, I've been doing this for too long. Liddell's home for wayward children. As Alice approaches the ground, she is swarmed by happy, well-fed, content, and healthy children. The downtrodden children from Bumby's former support home are all here too. The kids have never been happier, and they are ecstatic to see Alice again. As the children run through the arches into the entrance of the building, Angela Liddell is waiting for Alice, who meets Alice at the stairs. The little girl is in her Sunday best and is still clutching onto her plush rabbit. Angela, we will have time for a tea party today, Miss Liddell. Alice, always. Alice replies with a knowing grin. Angela excitedly beams back and then walks on alongside Alice into the building. Angela drops her rabbit toy to the floor absent-mindedly in her excitement as she skips along. As Alice and Angela walk by, the rabbit is left lying still and motionless on the floor. The sound of children and laughter fades. The rabbit then blinks, gets to his feet, and runs after his best friends. And the chapter ends. Okay, and that's the end of it. So I'll show a little bit of this here, and then I'll wrap up, I guess. So, what did I think of the experience? I think it could have worked. I think bottom line is that I think it is a story that deserves expression. I think, like Alan Wake 2, it is trying to do something deeply psychological, which would be very important for adolescent, aged children and young adults to play out some of these problems with grief and mourning. In this literal sense, the death of the parents, but for adolescents, it's also the symbolic death of their role as caretakers as they move on to forming their own identity. I worry that the game did not have good pacing. I also worry that the game covers too much narrative ground as Alice the Madness returns. However, I do think that there are a lot of games like Dragon's Dogma 2, like the Dead Space remake. Some of them cover the exact same grounds, just with an freshening up of their visuals. I think that some of the mechanics surrounding the game, like the weapons, there are just too many weapons with certain redundancies. Odds are some of the boss fights would be overly tedious. I think the game would have been too long. I think that there is too much time spent with cutscenes and with things that the player cannot interact in. I think one of the great things that the Dead Space remake did was that all of the cutscenes play out diegetically in the world, and you can move around as Isaac Clarke. Now, there are 2 scenes, or 3 scenes, I think, where the character or the player's agency is taken away. So I'm not saying that the whole game is like that. But there are great moments where you can look up archival footage of what happened on the Ishimura, and they play out as 3-dimensional holograms of a prior scene. And unlike an audio log, it's a little bit more interactive. You can see it take place in 3-dimensional space in what was an office, an engineering room, things like that. And I think that the Alice Asylum game could have done something similar, right? Where you get fragmented memories that would still allow the player to play, and that does a great thing. So the first time you play through, you're probably interested in exploring those details, but repetitive playthroughs, second and third time through, like a New Game Plus, if you want to challenge yourself, you don't have to see those memories anymore, so you can skip them entirely. And so I think that spoke and wheel system when it comes to designing narrative would have been great. I think that the game should have been nonlinear. It should have had different worlds that you could explore, very similar to a Zelda game perhaps. And each of those would have Metroidvania elements. So the game would have to redesign its tool system to reflect that, to where you could see a secret, make a note to yourself, okay, I'm going to have to come back to this world to get that. And that would allow the experience XP system and upgrades to breathe, to where you could collect those runes. That would also allow, when those cutscenes play in that spoken wheel system, they can do so in an embedded way and not in a linear, progressive way, like an old school game. A lot of these sequences before the end game, I don't feel like they necessarily have to have a causal linear progression, because a lot of them are just different aspects of Alice's grieving. So especially in the mid game, you could establish quite a lot of those non-linear aspects. And I think that would be a freshening up and a modernizing of Alice Asylum that would differentiate it from the Madness Returns. So that would be an idea. Of course, there's lots of different ways that you could modernize this system. Would it have been cool to see Alice Asylum done like Hades, where it is turned into a roguelike, and you take all of this amazing art and you put it into a procedurally generated system that would give it some of that schizophrenic nature of it. And only in the end game would you finally get all these breakthroughs. But as you played over and over again, and as you progressed through the roguelike and got better and better and had better runs, you would be able to see a lot more of this system. I think that would be great, because it would allow the Cheshire Cat to take the role that he would as a kind of Virgil-like guide, similar in... Actually, I've never played Hades, so I don't know, but I have a feeling that there would be a Virgil-like guide for the main character, Zagreus. I forget his name. And that would have been a great way to modernize this system. So I think if I was EA, I would have recognized the promise of the thematic subject matter. I would have recognized the growing distaste for live service games and a love still for cohesive, whole, single-player works. And I would have tried to design that game in a way that would be modern, replayable, and would maximize the art of the game without burning out the player. One way is through Metroidvania, another way is through a roguelike system. So I'm sure there are multiple ways to do it, but to me that would be sort of the big pulls. And that would address some of the weaknesses that I think are in the game, which we've talked about. I really enjoyed the first part of looking through this. I enjoyed this second part far less. And I think it has a lot to do with sort of the melodramatic resolution to the story. I felt like it was too allegorical. There was not enough of a bittersweet ending, of a what am I looking for? I guess just an ending that is satisfying, but also haunting, perhaps. Here we can see that there are some interesting themes that play out. So here, the big thing wasn't her parents, but it was actually her sister. In that great scene that I love, probably my favorite scene of the game, where we get to see Alice break something and Elizabeth soothes. Alice wants to identify with that role. And so part of her healing process is to become a sister the way Elizabeth was. And so we get that with Angela. I wish Angela was foreshadowed earlier. I think a lot of the twists, like the Queen of Hearts being the mother and the caterpillar being the father, also are kind of throwaway twists that I feel like should have been incorporated more into the story. It's actually incredible how much there is in the middle, but still how much is lacking. And if I was doing another draft of this, I would try to expand that middle so to allow for the roguelike or Metroidvania mechanics, but also to allow for the story and the gameplay. I feel like the game needs a lot more writing and a lot more voice acting. The problem with that is that there is just so much in this game that is unrepeatable or distinct, and that's a double-edged sword, because you get the innovation and the novelty of being of having every single proper thing, but that means that the animators and the programmers and the engineers, they have to go in and design those things separately from each other, and there's not a lot of repetition in that they could use to pad out the gameplay, pad out the story, whatever. I think that the caterpillar and the Cheshire Cat should have been combined into one Virgil-like character. I think that the mother being the Queen of Hearts and the father being the caterpillar should have been dropped entirely. I think that those lines could have been reincorporated in a way that would make sense. She could just talk to her father as a memory, and not have to deal with this metaphorization between the two. I think making Alice in Wonderland and reality a one-to-one comparison is not really how the unconscious works. Things can be multiple things at once. I think it ruins that cohesive and wholeness, where you can have bittersweet emotions, you can have all different kinds of complexity. What it's suggesting with these one-to-one relations, I find not really in keeping with the theme or the style of the game. Yeah, so keep in mind with the Dead Space remake, there aren't too many characters. We only have a couple proper noun characters. We have Isaac, and then we have his two good angel and bad angel people that ride in with him. And so your query throughout, your investigation throughout, is who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. And then there's those twist endings. And then, of course, you're going after your girlfriend. So it's a classic example of Dante's Divine Comedy, of going in a place and getting out with your beloved. And so I think it's an incredibly clean, simple story. But because of that, it blooms into something that's really allegorical. That's really, it's got good interpretations there. Like, what is the role of the mother in this story? What is the role of the girlfriend? If you know the Dead Space twist, there are a lot of implications there. And I think that there's just too much complexity in this. It really should not have too many enemies. It really should not have too many characters, because that's animation, that's voice acting, that's whatever. And if there are characters that come in, they really shouldn't be doing a whole lot of actions. They should just be talking pieces for the story. So a lot more writing should have been in here than concept art. And perhaps if they would have gotten greenlit on the story, they would have opportunities for a lot more writing, a lot more voice acting. I think those were kind of the points that I was thinking about as I was going through this design Bible. I think overall I had a really good time. I think what's great about the Alice Asylum design Bible in particular, compared to something like, I don't know, a Halo design Bible, is that you're getting some of the strongest aspects of what Alice Asylum would have had to offer without its weaknesses. And I think that is a really biting critique of the game, that, you know, we've played the Madness Returns, and the biggest critique was that it was too long. It felt stretched out, and it's a good story in there, but you have to play a lot of the game to get there. Well, here's the alternative. You get the great art, you get the great story, you get a lot of those great themes and psychological issues, but you have the game removed from it. And for some people, that would be enough. And I think, unfortunately for me, I will go back and replay Alice, the Madness Returns at some point in my life. But I think not having to play this game, I'm okay with. And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that this intellectual property of Alice in Wonderland could have been modernized in a way that would be surprising and fun to play and enjoyable. But the fact is that games are meant to be played. So at one end, I'm upset that EA did not greenlight this, that they did not lean into this and say, okay, there are great ideas here. Let's take those ideas and make a team that can do something with it that is modern or trending. And I happen to think that the third-person narrative action game is really drying up. I think people still really enjoy those games, but I think we're looking, if you want to look to the future, a lot of games are including roguelike modes. I think games like Returnal, featuring it as a core element and then using that to build a golden circle story, that kind of slowly spirals out, I think that would have been the way to go with Alice, especially considering that it takes place in her psyche, very similar to Returnal. And so you get this kind of wild wonderland of all that art that gets to be used over and over again, which I think the artists would really enjoy, in a way that's kind of recombinatory, very much like the unconscious. Anyway, I'm kind of repeating myself over and over again here, so I'll stop and I'll conclude. But if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you agree with me or disagree with me, either I think are okay, just because there are a lot of fans of Alice in Wonderland who would go through the process of playing this game, regardless if it was tedious or if it was really enjoyable, because they want that adventure, they want to see that art, and I think that's valid. So thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next one.